My name is James Rowlands, and I am a lifelong wrestling fan. In 2015, I started a podcast with my friend, Dan White, reviewing the WWE Network and seeing if it's worth the $9.99 a month. It was. And since then, every month we watch the latest WWE pay-per-views, NXT, and now 205 Live. Still continuing our journey through the network, watching ECW, WCW, and all its classic content. Until we've watched it all, we are with you, and we are the WNR. Yes, hello, I am James Rowlands, and as always, I'm joined by
Dan White.
And today, it's the WNR129, and it's Charcters Part 2. So finally, Dan, we're going to be doing the second part. Episode 16 was the first Controversial Charcters. A lot has changed since then. Are you looking forward to today's episode?
I am, yes. You know, we've both done a bit of research. We've both got a few interesting stories, and yeah, you know, hopefully it should be as class one. Yes,
let's hope so. I mean, we got a lot of comments from the last one. Of course, everybody can comment us today about anything they think, if they agree or disagree. We should say we kind of started this off on the Halloween special that we released, where we did a couple of controversial stories, bringing into this. And of course, next week, the WNR130, we'll be watching WWE Survivor Series 1997, which of course is a Montreal Screwjob. So we're just full of controversial things at the moment. Yes. But we'll start off an alternate intro. I'll start off doing that. And seeing as it is controversial, I haven't got like a sweary one, but I think you'll know where I'm going from. Bodies have been bruised. How do you learn to fall off a 20-foot ladder? He may have been broken in half. I thought Shane might have been knocked out. I dislocated my right shoulder. I think I broke my tailbone. Neck's broken. I ruptured a disc which fragmented into my spinal column.
Careers ended.
Careers ended in an instant. Yes, this is entertainment, but the hazards are real. How is he able to stand? Trainers, EMTs, referees down. No matter who you are, whatever you do, please don't try this at home. But let's start off with a little bit of fun. And our first story shall be the plane ride from hell. On May 4th, 2002, WWE had one of the most controversial moments ever, the notorious plane ride from hell. The chaotic incident, which happened during a chartered flight from London to the US, resulted in several superstars being fired, a lawsuit, and accusations of sexual assault.
Following the UK-only Insurrection pay-per-view, the plane was carrying the entire WWE crew back to the US, from cameramen and seamstresses to wrestlers and Vince McMahon.
But the actions of a handful of superstars would make this the stuff of wrestling legend. JBL, Michael Hayes, Ric Flair, Goldust, Scott Hall, X-Pac, Mr. Perfect, and Brock Lesnar. So what happened?
Well, Just Incredible was on the fly after Insurrection, and mayhem began when superstars and staff became heavily intoxicated. An interview with NoKayfabian.com, former WWE superstar Just Incredible said, "For some reason, and I bet you Vince has not done it since, it had a full and open bar." What I mean by that is a plane full of alcoholic wrestlers at the end of a grueling tour is like the last day of school.
Well, Sean X-Pac Waltman also claimed that other superstars were taking pills, GHB, and smoking pot in the toilet, a dangerous cocktail that soon turned the flight into utter chaos. And the first bit, Michael Hayes versus JBL.
The first reported incident involved WWE writer Michael Hayes and JBL, who was still an active wrestler at the time. JBL had a gash across his forehead, and Hayes, who X-Pac claims was so inebriated at the time he'd mistakenly tried to urinate on Linda McMahon, punched the wound, reopening it. Credible recalled that JBL was bleeding like a pig, covering his suit in blood. Reports say that JBL punched Hayes in response, and Hayes was unconscious, either from the blow or the booze.
Michael Hayes' mullet versus X-Pac. While Hayes was unconscious, Waltman took the opportunity for some revenge that had been a long time coming. In a reshoot interview, Waltman said, "I knew he'd been burying me in the booking meetings. I had out with him several times in front of people. I resent the fact that he was volunteering Edge and Christian and Matt and Jeff Hardy for these ridiculous fucking stunts in TLC matches on Raw. He was still rocking the mullet, so I said, somebody get me a pair of scissors." And then cut off Hayes' ponytail, provoking a huge cheer for other passengers on the plane. He said, I posted it on the wall at TV the next day and auctioned it off.
Well, up next on the Flight of Hell, we have Brock Lesnar versus Mr. Perfect. In a moment that would lead to Kurt Mr. Perfect Hennig to call himself the guy who took down Brock Lesnar at 35,000 feet, the two superstars wrestled in the aisleway. Both hanging from motor, the men had a competitive edge, and Hennig challenged Lesnar, still new to WWE, to a shoot takedown fight. Waltman claims this was something that had happened on a previous flight too, between Kurt Angle and a drunken Vince McMahon. The scrap quickly got out of hand when the two collided into the emergency exit door. Passengers were terrified the door would burst open and they'd be sucked out to their deaths. Reportedly broken up by Dave Finlay, Triple H and Paul Heyman.
The dirtiest player in the game. Well, Ric Flair lived up to his moniker when he stripped naked except for his robe and paraded up and down the aisle with his trademark strut and his... Woo! One female flight attendant described how he put little Nate into action, saying he flashed his nakedness, spinning his penis around. It was alleged that he grabbed two attendants' hands and forced them onto his crutch.
I hope they was female attendants. Well, a bad time for the bad guy. This is all on the same flight.
Yeah, it is all the same flight, yeah.
A bad time for the bad guy. Scott Hall, who has a long history of addiction issues, was also accused of sexually inappropriate behaviour by making explicit comments at the attendant. On WWE's Beyond the Ring, the former Razor Ramon said the whole trip was just a kind of pills and booze. Some claimed that he and Hennig were squirting wrestlers with shaving cream, though Jim Ross later spoke up for Hall and said he was innocent of any misbehaviour. But Just Incredible recalls that Hall was so intoxicated that after the fight, he had to roll him in a wheelchair past Vince and past Jim Ross through customs.
You imagine Scott being like, it's been wheeled through. Yeah, like I said, Mr. Perfect lost his job because of that. Scott Hall was released because of that. And there was a lot going on there. But you can just see, like, you know what I mean? They pretend like the Guerrero death or the Benoit kind of what happened there was a surprise. But the behaviour on flights and, you know what I mean, in public, the way it was kind of just take what you want and see what happens. You can see why. No offence to Kurt Hennig and Young and people like Scott Hall, all that addiction. Even Just Incredible, X-Pac's been struggling with it as well. So, you know, it's amazing some of these guys did manage to fucking live through it, you know?
Oh, most definitely, yeah. It's, you know, it obviously was a crazy time back then. But, you know, it is probably in a more lenient time as well. Even though it was early 2000s, you know, and quite a bit of a modern era, it was still, you know, a bit more lenient then and...
especially generally where anything went, you know what I mean? Maybe they thought, we can get away with how big we were.
And, you know, just like to say that we're currently watching a Dino Bravo versus Brutus the Barber beefcake match on in the background. And what the fuck is Brutus the Barber wearing? I mean, he's got some trousers that are see-through at the side.
I mean, I can't really explain that. I don't know if it's late 80s or what it is, but if a woman was wearing that today, it would be too revealing, I would think.
For a man wearing it, it's far too revealing.
Well, talking of Dino Bravo, move on to Dino Bravo now. And, of course, controversial characters, we're going to have some moments, but let's look at a controversial character, Dino Bravo. Dead at 44, shot 17 times for an alleged role in illegal cigarette smuggling in Canada. 1948 to 1993, aged 44. It was and is still an unsolved crime. The Dino Bravo death story is one of the most bizarre stories to involve the death of a wrestler. Adolfo Bresciano, or Dino, commonly known by fans, was a well-known WWF personality in the 1970s and the 1980s.
Nicknamed the Italian Strongman and Canada's Strongest Man, Bravo won the WWF World Tag Team Championship with Dominic DeNucci. But in 1991, he was forced to part ways with the Federation. Not even 2 years later, Dino would be dead at the hands of a still unknown gunman.
This is how he got involved in the world of smuggling. After a time from the WWF, Dino reportedly struggled to make ends meet. Related by marriage to Montreal mobster Vic Cartroni, Dino became involved with crime. Using his status as a wrestling celebrity, he smuggled and sold illegal cigarettes in Canada, mainly to Aborigines. After the deal went bad, it is believed that Dino angered the mafia and that his death was a price paid.
The events surrounding the Dino Bravo death are as followed. Dino Bravo was killed on Wednesday, March the 10th, 1993. The story goes that while his wife was taking his daughter to the ballet class, he sat down to watch a hockey game on television and ended up shot 17 times with 7 hits to the head and 10 to his torso.
The crime remains an unsolved murder to this day. However, it is widely accepted that Dino's involvement in smuggling was the reason for his death, and there were no signs of a break-in and no footprints outside the window of the home. There is speculation that Dino knew his killer and that the person was watching hockey with him when the assassination happened. While this cannot be known for sure, what is certain is that Dino's wife found him later that evening when she returned home with their daughter.
The Bravo death story shocked fans. Even though many famous wrestlers had died unexpectedly, the Dino Bravo death story was one of the few where a beloved wrestling personality was murdered. Friends of the Italian strongman were equally saddened by his murder, but not all of them were as shocked as the fans. In his autobiography, Bret Hart said that Dino had confided in him that he thought his life was in danger, and his close friend, wrestler Rick Martel, shared that Dino had told him about his connections.
While the news about the Dino Bravo death story is still a source of intrigue to this very day, the world of wrestling prefers to remember him as the man he was, not just as he was in life, not as a victim of a crime. Immediately after his death and over the years that followed, many wrestlers and fans shared stories about the impact that the Italian strongman had on their lives. Rick Martel has been one of the most wrestling community to speak about the slain wrestling star, and you can find hundreds of tributes from devoted fans saying how much they loved watching him in the ring posted online. And remembering the man, Dino Bravo's grave is located in Notre Dame des Neiges Cemetery in Montreal, Quebec. The plot is located in lot MO11 53W section M5.
Just in case you wanted to
visit him. Just in case you wanted to put it in Google Maps. So, yeah, I mean, we start off with a murder, but very interesting details in there.
Oh, most definitely, yeah. Especially the fact that it's still an unsolved murder, but I suppose people probably know who it is, but seeing as though they're mobsters or mafia or whatever,
exactly,
you know, they don't want to say, oh yeah, it's such and such, and end up getting 17 shots.
It's do you know, and also it sounds like a perfect Netflix series because they like doing what happened to the murderer, and the Dino Bravo, especially with the mob involved, the mafia involved as well. I think it would be quite a good story. But like I said, we get a lot of deaths, a lot of suicides, and I wanted to start something different, a controversial character.
Well, I can top that one, and mine is a story about some homosexual sexual assault.
Well, Dan, take it away.
Well, where modern wrestling fans are familiar with Randy Orton, and likely his father, Cowboy Bob Orton, but may have probably never have heard of Barry Orton. He's the uncle of Randy, and he wasn't in the business very long, basically serving as a jobber to various promotions, including the WWF, but he never achieved the heights that his family members did. However, he was an integral to a scandal that shook up the WWF. That's what we like.
Yes, we do.
In the story. But in the late 70s, he worked with NWA and would travel with front office worker Terry Garvin. And during one of those car rides, Garvin asked Orton to perform oral sex on him.
Sorry.
Which he turned down.
Oh, right, okay.
Years later, Garvin joined the WWF, due in part to his friendship with Pat Patterson. Soon, word broke out that he was harassing ring boys in the company. And I don't know if that was boys or if that's just
it's just the name of it, yeah. We can't confirm or deny at the moment.
Soon word broke out that he was harassing ring boys in the company and attempting to have sex with them. One of those ring boys, Tom Cole, refused Garvin's advances and was soon fired. Orton then came forward with his story when asked about it on a radio show. And Vince McMahon settled out of court with Cole, and soon Orton was blacklisted from the entire industry. Meanwhile, Garvin and his good friend Pat Patterson resigned from the company. Ring announcer Mel Phillips, who had allegedly been harassing the ring boys, was fired. Garvin never returned, but Pat Patterson quietly got his old job back in a year after it was promised to Jake Roberts. There are many horrible accusations thrown about, yet somehow no one was convicted of any crime.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the weird thing about it, and back in the day of these kind of things going on, you know, especially with like the Harvey Weinstein state that we're in now, all these stories coming out. I mean, the Pat Patterson thing was huge because he was Vince McMahon's right-hand man, so to speak. And when he did go away, you know, people thought, oh, he might never come back. And of course, he eventually did, and he's of the WWE today. But it's interesting how Orton got blacklisted because it was almost like, you know, we're going to make sure you don't tell anybody this story. You know, you make sure you're not going to be able to work in wrestling. So it is quite shocking. So we've had a bit of homosexual assault. We've had a murder, and let's move on to a suicide. Good old suicide. Come on, this is controversial.
We've already done Chris Benoit.
Yeah, no, we did Chris Benoit before, but this time we're going to focus on the Renegade, aged just 33. Richard Wilson, not that one, is proof that a wrestler does not need to be in the spotlight of the professional wrestling world to be remembered. Known to his friends as Rick and to the fans as a Renegade, Wilson had a short career in World Championship Wrestling. The Renegade was most known as the WCW's attempt, perhaps tongue-in-cheek, at creating their own version of the WWF Ultimate Warrior. The gimmick was essentially the exact thing as Warrior, including Renegade's mannerism and high-energy entrance to the ring.
There was no cease and desist letters sent out back in this time. I mean, someone does the too sweet symbol and they get a letter to them, but someone else does the exact gimmick as the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah.
And nothing said.
Well, no, this is the thing. So questions were asked about this, but it would be the following year in WCW when they did it with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash pretending to be Diesel and Razor and not actually saying they were part of WCW. They were known as the Outsiders, weren't they? And that's how it all kind of got started. But the Renegade was quite an amazing thing. They had just signed Macho Man Randy Savage, and he was teaming up with Hogan, and they thought the best thing to do, because the Warrior was out of favour with the WWF at the time, try to get hold of the Ultimate Warrior. He didn't want to come, so they literally, like I say, just created another guy, called him
into the ring.
Yeah, called him the Renegade, gave him long hair and a face paint, and he came running out. And at first, you know, he was really over because fans weren't sure exactly who it was. The Renegade made his first appearance for the WCW in 1995 and quickly intrigued fans, as many people speculate that he was secretly the Ultimate Warrior. See, he's called the Renegade, but secretly the Ultimate Warrior. And when it was finally revealed that the Renegade was not the mysterious wrestler, fans seemed to sadly lose interest in him. Even in the storyline of WCW, the Renegade was being abandoned, as after his defeat in November 1995 edition of Nitro, his then manager Jimmy Hart turned his back on him. The event would be the start of what would be a 6-month break from professional wrestling for Richard Wilson.
When he returned to WCW in July 1996, the Renegade no longer wore his face paint and usual costume. This only seemed to weigh even more. Ultimately, WCW was unable to spur interest in the Renegade. The company chose to part ways with Richard Wilson, releasing him from his contract at the end of 1998.
So we see him at the moment, he's in action against DDP. I think DDP looks quite young, even though he's old here. But anyway, the death of the Renegade. Well, not much is known about the specific events leading up to the conclusion of the Renegade death story. However, it's clear that Richard Williams ultimately decided to continue to pursue his wrestling career. After his WCW contract was terminated, Wilson chose to simply retire.
The former professional wrestler stayed out of the spotlight and kept to himself. Reportedly, he was devastated by the fact that he was not able to become a big name in the world of wrestling. He began to suffer from depression, and by February 1999 it seemed that he had spiralled out of control. On the 23rd of that month, Renegade chose to end his own life. He died by suicide due to a gunshot wound to the head. He was only 33 years old at the time of his death.
Now, oh my god, that diamond cutter off the second rope to the Renegade, just like a shot to the head. DDP goes for the pin, gets the win. Ways to go, you can hang yourself, you know, you can do other things, but I think if I was going to commit suicide, if I'm jumping up a train and maybe falling off a tall bit, shooting yourself seems the best idea, doesn't it? You know, 'cause at least, boom, you're done then.
Well, you know, unless you completely miss all the vital parts and don't kill yourself and you're just lying there in pain for a long time.
Oh, God. Anyway, let's cheer ourselves up a little bit. Fans look beyond the Renegade death. It seems that despair over his lack of a strong fan base led to the Renegade's decision to kill himself. Sadly, it seems that the wrestler was loved more than he knew. Today, fans continue to mourn his loss, posting occasions and memorials to him on tribute websites. They most prefer to recall the times that they enjoyed watching him in the ring, rather than dwell on the sad circumstances surrounding his untimely death.
But then, if he was still alive, he wouldn't have got these tributes, and people wouldn't have been referring and recalling the time watching him in the ring.
Yeah, but just imagine after the Ultimate Warrior's death, he comes out on SmackDown just as Warrior. People go, "Oh, maybe he's alive." you don't know. We're going to cheer ourselves up a little bit. We're going to talk about Sid Vicious and Arn Anderson.
Yes, well, there are a couple of different versions of this story. Arn Anderson and Sid Vicious were out drinking with a bunch of WCW wrestlers. Sid started running his mouth about how he was going to be the next huge star of wrestling, and the Four Horsemen better get out of his way before he runs through them.
Well, anyways, Arn Anderson was a little less than impressed with Mr. Vicious and started. He's never drawn a dime in his life, and he's nothing but a big goof. Well, harsh words there. And even more harsh words were exchanged, and a few beers may be thrown, but both men returned to their hotel rooms.
However, a little later in the night, Sid burst into Arn's hotel room while Anderson was sleeping and started beating him with an object while Arn is in his bed. Anderson got to his feet and the two really started going at it, battling throughout the room. Eventually, Sid got hold of a pair of scissors and started stabbing Anderson all over his body. According to reports, the entire hotel hallway was smeared in blood.
Fuck. Well, Ric Flair later said it looked like a murder scene because of all the blood on the floor and the walls. And like we talk about, before we get more detail, this was another European tour. They can't remember if it were in England or in Germany when it happened, but like I said, a lot of stuff happened on European tours. Well, finally, Two Called Scorpio stepped in and saved Arn's life. And this incident got out very quickly and pretty much embarrassed the company to no end. Thankfully, Anderson recovered, although this could have turned into another Bruiser Brody situation. Before we get on to Bruiser Brody in a bit, I should say this kind of fucked up Sid Vicious kind of big babyface push. The plan was he was going to be the kind of next Hulk Hogan or the next Sting in WCW, and because of this happened, he was just unsafe to work with. Yeah, he did win the world title a few more times in his career, but he never became the kind of lead out star. But
well, I've got maybe slightly different take on this story. But during an overseas tours in '93, Anderson and Vicious got into an argument inside a bar. As mentioned on the plane ride from hell, these overseas tours could be brutal on wrestlers, and tempers were bound to flare much easier than normal. This tour was particularly tough on the crew, as after a lengthy flight, they drove a few hours to a show, then wrestled, then travelled another 10 hours. By the time everyone hit the bar, tensions were incredibly high. Everyone just wanted to relax a bit before the next show. While drinking, Anderson began wondering why the company wasn't drawing, to which Vicious replied, it was because Double A's best friend, Rick, was an old man who needed to get the fuck out of the way. Beer was immediately thrown, words were exchanged, but the two didn't come to blows. Sid claimed while on the way back to his motel room, Anderson broke open a beer bottle and threatened to cut him with it. Inside of his room, Vicious continued to stew about the incident to the point where he broke a chair and planned to beat on the legs. He knocked on his door and Anderson apparently saw that Vicious had a weapon, so he came to the door with a pair of scissors. Vicious claims he was stabbed, but then they wrestled the weapon away and began stabbing Anderson. Blood was everywhere and Scorpio had to break things up. But he was upset that Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat didn't come out of the rooms to help.
Yeah, but what are you going to do? A guy who's nearly 7 foot with a pair of scissors. And how is this guy still employed with any company after that?
He was reportedly stabbed 20 times and Vicious had to have surgery. Ted Turner nearly shut down the entire tour and Bischoff fired Sid and suspended Anderson as soon as they returned. It was an incredibly violent incident. Both wrestlers were incredibly lucky they weren't killed.
Yeah, but it's still, I mean, if that happened on a WWE tour now, the person that had happened, the person that did that would have been arrested and in jail right now, wouldn't they? They wouldn't be allowed to carry on doing house shows or whatever it was.
Early 90s. I think this is one of these things that, boys will be boys and they kind of just shook it off.
Yeah. All right, what we're going to do for a second, we're going to take a time out and watch a match. Because our next person that we're going to talk about is Mike Awesome. But one of my favourite kind of feuds in wrestling, one of my favourite matches, was the Masato Tanaka versus Mike Awesome matches from 1998 through to about 2000 in ECW. There are a series of matches you can watch anyone, and it is incredible. And to prove that, at One Night Stand 2005, when ECW finally came back, they were in the Hammersmith Ballroom Arena, and they decided to have a Mike Awesome versus Masato Tanaka match. Have you ever seen Awesome versus Tanaka before, Dan?
I haven't, no.
Okay, this is one of these where if people are listening, you have to watch this, because I don't care what you say, it is such a great match, and every one of these matches, they pulled it out. And Mike Awesome here, he'd been, you know, we've got to listen to Joey Styles as well. He's talking about Mike Awesome at the moment. He'll take a swing at that crap. Well, Joey Styles hates Mike Awesome. You just said he'd take a swipe at him. We'll get into more details in a minute, but it's fucking brilliant. There's a couple of really great bits. This is a part of it. Called Mick Foley and Joey Styles on commentary.
Shit. That is fucking brutal.
Talk about controversial. Joey Styles. Yeah. We'll get on to that in a second, because...
Suicide dive by Mike Awesome, and a shame he didn't succeed in taking his own life.
Oh my god. Oh, Tanaka sends Awesome into the crowd. And Joe Styles is like this for the majority of the match. Tanaka's got the chair though, he wants to use it on Mike.
Oh, fucking hell. Just runs and belts him on the head with an unprotected chair shot to the head, basically. What's JBL and Orlando Jordan that doing? I thought he was part of his... When is this, Matt?
It's just 2005. The ECW come back, and Raw and SmackDown crew were upset by it, and Bischoff leading the Raw crew. I think JBL leading the SmackDown crew there. It would end in a big brawl, and of course Blue Meanie getting the shit kicked out of him later on, which we're actually going to watch. Whilst we're here, we might as well watch it, isn't it? You know,
might as well, yeah.
Watch the Meanie thing afterwards.
So is this just the normal matchup, obviously for ECW?
Yeah, anything goes in ECW.
Or in any match.
Yeah, literally.
But yet you have a branded pay-per-view like TLC, and only one match is a TL or a C match.
Oh, Awesome with a clothesline on the apron to Tanaka, and he's got him now. What's he going to do with him?
He's got him set up on the outside.
Oh no, he's got him up. Powerbomb!
Fucking hell. He dropped him on the back of his fucking head, and that looked like it hurt Tanaka.
On the table, on the barricade. Awesome, just trying to kill Tanaka. And this is like every one of the matches, they were doing shit like this. I'm surprised you didn't kill him.
That would have been sore if it was on a fucking ring apron. God.
Awesome to the top. Oh.
Frog splash hits the mark.
It's got to be it, surely. Oh.
They call me Shirley, but Tanaka manages to kick out.
Oh. Well, how the hell did this guy manage to get showed up at that? Mike Awesome saying it's going to be the end.
Is that Edge there?
Yeah, Edge and JBL talking. Awesome going for the Awesome bomb. But he's got him up.
Another power bomb there from Awesome.
And the Raw and SmackDown crew seem to be enjoying this.
They do indeed, yes.
What's Awesome looking for?
Both men wildly swinging chairs, and Awesome ends up hitting Tanaka on the head twice, but that's just psyching up the Japanese man.
Oh, listen to the impact.
The third one, but that's not keeping him down.
Dent in the chair. Oh my god.
This is just psyching Tanaka up.
Took Mike Awesome down on a move that didn't look as pretty. Now he's got the two dented chairs. What's he going to do with Awesome?
Tornado DDT off the second rope. 1, 2.
Oh.
But Awesome managing to kick out.
Oh.
And Tanaka's got a big cut on his shoulder. Jesus Christ, he puts a chair over the face of Orton and just hits it with another chair.
And now Awesome, even more trouble.
Fucking hell, and he drops on top of him with another chair.
Oh.
But Mike Awesome still managing to kick out.
This is the kind of mindless violence I like. And Tanaka now, what's he going to go for? Oh, looks like the roaring elbow. Oh! Big release German suplex. And an Awesome speared Tanaka.
Tanaka looks like he hit his head on them chairs on the way down as well.
Awesome going up with the chair. Oh!
Second rope chair shot to the head.
Ah, and, you know, you're telling me you can block a chair shot to the face. Hey, table for two now. Awesome, trying to get the table on who? There we go. No, it's broken. Fuck it. No, you're trying to get the table in, but the amount of punishment that he's had. Big scooty.
Fans cheering on the fact that he's got the table in the ring. JBL with a beer.
Mike Awesome setting up the table.
Him and Tanaka are in the corner. He's placing him in a very precarious position.
No. What is he going to be looking for? A superplex?
But Tanaka's looking to fight out. Fucking hell, Tanaka DDT's him through the table. But Awesome with the cover.
Oh.
Awesome managing to kick out.
Uh-huh. Well, ECW chance, and these guys might be past their prime, but again, everything they got here tonight. And how is Tanaka still managing to get to his feet? How's Awesome still up?
I've no idea. But the crumpled table's still there in the ring.
And now Awesome's got Tanaka.
Fucking hell, Awesome bomb through the dismantled table.
That was even crazier than the first one. They go for the pin. Oh, no.
And Tanaka's still managing to kick out.
Oh. How is he doing that? There's scars on his body. Well, this is what ECW is all about. Oh, here we go. Awesome sets up the table.
On the outside now. Falls against the barricade.
Says to the fans, you might have some company in a minute.
Hard move, though.
This match rules by the fans. Awesome. Going to go for the Awesome bomb. Oh!
Over the top rope, but Tanaka manages to backslide. Also attempt. Fucking hell. And then Awesome with a suicide dive. 2, 3. Fucking hell.
What did I say? Doesn't that want to make you watch like 10 Awesome Tanaka matches now?
I don't really think I'll be more matches from these two.
They're going to kill each other. Tanaka got powerbombed to the outside. Awesome followed it up with a suicide dive. My God. And Mike Awesome, credit to him. I think he was a really good wrestler, especially such a big man. Able to do stuff like that, but Tanaka, fair play to him, managing to go all the way to the outside and Awesome following him. I mean, what did you think of the match?
I thought it was certainly an extreme match.
Yeah, it was. And now Awesome decking the referee as well. Well, anyway, let's talk about Mike Awesome because unfortunately, Mike Awesome, 1965 to 2007, age 42. And you have to be a confident person to choose Awesome to be part of your... And in the ring, Mike Awesome, or Michael Alfonso, definitely carried himself with confidence. During the course of his 17-year career, the heavyweight won the ECW World Heavyweight Championship twice and the WWF Hardcore Championship twice. He also won several titles with Frontier Martial Arts Wrestling and was ranked in the top 10 of the annual rankings of top singles wrestlers published in Pro Wrestling Illustrated in 2000. Sadly, the events surrounding the Mike Awesome death has largely overshadowed his career in the squared circle.
After a brief stint with TNA in 2003, Mike Awesome began to compete as a singles wrestler on the independent circuit. He wrestled in Japan with a number of other promotions for brief periods of time. Then, in February 2006, he suddenly announced that he was retiring from wrestling. At the time, he cited dissatisfaction with his pay as one of the primary reasons for leaving the wrestling world.
Well, a marriage dispute sets off the Mike Awesome death story. Well, much of what is now known about the events surrounding the Mike Awesome death was not revealed until months after he died. Reportedly, Mike Alfonso got into a heated dispute with his wife after she wanted to have divorce. He was reported to have grabbed her by the throat and to have slammed her into a wall. Fearing for his life, his wife called the police and Alfonso was arrested and charged with domestic abuse. While he was still in jail, his wife visited him that she was going through with a divorce and taking their 2 children.
After Mike Awesome was released from jail, he returned to his home in Tampa, Florida. At some point soon after, he hung himself, most likely because he was facing criminal charges and he had lost his family. It is also possible that he did not find the career in real estate that he launched after his retirement to be satisfying.
Well, Mike's body was discovered by a group of friends in 2007. He had turned 42 just a month before his death. Now, can I get onto something before we say this? We look at this story here with Mike Awesome, getting a divorce, wanting to leave with the children. If the wife had decided to stay with the kids and Awesome been released from jail, do you think we would have had the Chris Benoit kind of story? Because, I mean, that was February 2007. Benoit would be, July 2007?
Yeah.
So it'd be a couple of months later, do you think maybe we can look at the Benoit tragedy and maybe think you know, Benoit was going through some tough time, and maybe he got told that she was going to move away with the kids, and you know, if Awesome's hanging himself, I'm not saying I'm not saying Mike Awesome would have killed his wife and kid. I'm not saying that, but like you got to look at it in those ways. It's very similar in weird ways to that.
Yeah, most definitely. But well, you know, it's.
I know we're going down a dark way here, but you got to look at things, especially when we're doing controversial characters, you know. Well, anyway, the wrestling world reacts to this.
Well, following the news that Mike Awesome died, both the WWE and ECW paid tribute to him. Before the February 20th, 2000 episode of ECW on Sci-Fi, a graphic with Mike that said in memory of was shown. The WWE placed a tribute article about the wrestler on their website. Information that the wrestler had been arrested for domestic violence was not revealed until after the shocking news of the murder-suicide death of Chris Benoit, which occurred in June 2007.
Yeah, so we only got the details afterwards, and maybe, you know, if it was there before, we could have a look, you know, and try to help other people out. But anyway, Mike Awesome's grave, because you'll want to know, is located at Elmwood Estates in Great Falls. The plot is located at Road 2, Plot 6. Even more controversial is the Joey Styles foreshadowing from One Night Stand 2005. Towards the beginning of the Awesome Tanaka match, Styles is ranting about Mike Awesome, about when Mike Awesome left for WCW. Awesome does a suicide dive onto Tanaka when Styles calls the move. He adds,
and it's a shame he didn't succeed in taking his own life. And it's one of famous moments for all the wrong reasons. And we love that match, but you know, it's kind of one of these things that's taken in hindsight, really.
Certainly. Now we know he actually did it, you know. I remember this. It was awkward enough at the time. I like Styles, but that wasn't his proudest moment, even without the later context.
Another moment was when Benoit was on the top rope to do his flying headbutt to Bischoff and Austin on the mic, screams, "Kill that sumbitch."
But that match was incredible, and it should have opened the door for Awesome to have another go in the league, but Styles bitching tarnished the match instead of selling the performance, which was a great match. And still being on One Night Stand 2005, let's just go to the end. We talked about Blue Meanie and JBL in most ridiculous moments when the Blue World Order beat JBL, but this is what stemmed from it. In One Night Stand, it's the mass brawl at the end, and the Raw crew and SmackDown crew come. It's weird Kurt Angle being anti-ECW, and the following year he would be a member of the ECW roster. Yeah, exactly, yeah. Tyson Tomko. Right, we're going to stare here now because they're having a face-off. The ECW crew on one side. Look at Blue Meanie. We've just seen him in the crowd there. JBL, look at the cowboy hat, and let's see what the cowboy hat does in this, because he picks out the Blue Meanie. You know exactly where he is. Look, there's Meanie on that side. Look at Meanie now. He's face paint. He's fine. Nothing wrong with him. Who the Matt Morgan is that? Fucking hell. Oh, no. Not Fat Taz. Right, here we go. So that's what we're looking at. Focus on the cowboy hat. Dudley's Mysterio. This is going to be a brawl to end it all.
JBL's just staring at him now. Oh, he's turned his attention away.
There we go. Look. There you go. Straight to him. Gone through the crowd. JBL now, look, going from behind. Right in the back of the head. Look, still going over him. There he is, still punching his face in. JBL. And now people realise what's going on, so they're trying to get him away from it a little bit, but he's still going after the Mean. Look at the hard
punching him.
Yeah, I know, hard punches. Mean he can't do anything about it.
Angle's on the outside, getting Taz missioned.
Now Nova and Stevie, I think, know what's going on.
So they've separated JBL.
Yeah, I can't see the Meanie at the moment. All I can see is
he's in the corner.
Oh, right, there's Bradshaw. There's Benoit. Sandman there with a kendo stick.
There's Meanie busted open. He's on the right-hand
Yeah.
side.
You look at the state of his face. They do a close-up of it in a minute as well. We'll pause it on that. So there's ECW kind of won. And now, you can see it from here. You can see the Meanie's face from here.
Yeah, he's got a crimson face.
She was lucky to get that in one piece. I think Bubba actually helped him out. Do you know what I mean? He actually said, come on, I'll let you get her out of here. And you can see by his shirt and the blood on him as well, like he's definitely got involved in it. And Meanie's just in the corner there. You see the Meanie there, right in front. Yeah. And you can see the look on the people, because they obviously see the Meanie and ask him what's going on. And he's saying, oh, you know, JBL did this. Sandman saying, what the fuck? So another controversial moment. I mean, what do you think of that there? Have you ever seen anything like it?
No. You know, you can definitely tell that JBL targeted the Blue Meanie. And, you know, he was just going for him, and he wasn't pulling any of his punches either.
Nah,
there was genuine hatred between the two.
Yeah, honestly, it's horrible, and we've talked about on Race Ridiculous what WWE did to kind of sort it out and mean a meanie victory over JBL. But after that, that's common assault, and JBL should have been seeing a few nights in jail because of that. But anyway, we have to move on from all this fun, and well, we haven't had a woman, have we? So I think our next one shall be something to do with a lady. So yeah, we haven't mentioned any women yet. So Dan, we're going to have a couple of women now. First off, you can start us off.
Jessica Heiser, born 25th of June 1991, is an American professional wrestler, best known by her ring names Jessie K and Kennedy Brink. She regularly worked for Maryland Championship Wrestling, but she's currently signed to WWE in NXT as a referee under the name of Jessica Carr, who we saw debut in the Mae Young Classic.
Yeah, who can forget Jess Carr, now part of the NXT roster as well as referee.
Well, signing Brink isn't huge news in itself. It should be noted that they didn't really sign her to wrestle, but become a WWE official. And as some of you already know, the announcement of Kennedy Brink signing as a female wrestler is big news. It is far from being historic. Brink will not be the first woman to officiate in a wrestling match in the WWE. It will be the first female referee in over 30 years. The first woman was by the name of Rita Chatterton, or Rita Marie as she was known in the then WWF. In fact, the company's first ever woman official, Rita Marie, officiated several WWF matches that involved the likes of Terry Funk, the Moondogs, and Jimmy Snuka, and so on and so forth. She, just like her male counterparts, did not fear in jumping in and breaking up an in-ring melee. Well, that's not controversial in itself, but you know we carry on, and you tell me if it's controversial or not. But the WWF and Vince McMahon had her on as a guest of the interview program TNT, aka Tuesday Night Titans. She also did a photo shoot for the WWF magazine. Behind the scenes, Rita Marie Chatterton was a single mother of a young daughter. Vince McMahon brought her in and allegedly told her she could make up to $500,000 a year as the first ever female referee. Of course, this fairy tale doesn't have a happy ending. Obviously, otherwise it wouldn't be on the controversial characters. But in July of 1986, Rita Marie would be fired. The official reasoning that she just wasn't on par with her male counterparts. A few years later, around 1992, Rita Chatterton made an appearance on the Geraldo Rivera show, Now It Can Be Told, and accused Vince McMahon of sexual assault. According to Chatterton, she approached McMahon about working some extra dates. McMahon alluded by telling her to cooperate with him and he'll give her what she wants. The two somehow ended up in McMahon's limousine, where Chatterton says McMahon got physically aggressive with her. She said McMahon pulled down his pants and had Chatterton straddle him, where he got off.
Oh my God.
Apparently, Chatterton had former WWF wrestler Dr. D, David Schultz, corroborate her story. The two were seeking a $5 million. Vince McMahon and his team of attorneys fought the suit and refused to settle out of court. McMahon had a countersuit against both Chatterton and Riviera for what they say was a defaming piece on him. The suit was later dropped after McMahon faced federal charges in his famed steroid trial. The statute of limitations ran out on the case and Rita Marie fell back into obscurity. She is currently a grandmother living in upstate New York. Only Chatterton and Vince knows really what happened in that limousine.
Oh.
Well, 30 years later, and here we are. The WWE in particular, their developmental brand NXT, has a female referee. Only time will tell if Jessica Carr becomes a full-time official or will eventually wrestle. It's a big step for WWE. Let's just hope there are no scandals attached on this second go around.
Yeah, let's hope Triple H doesn't get him into a limo then, let's hope. I mean, like we talked about back in the day, lots of rumours going around, and this with Vince McMahon, you know, and a lot of stuff's come to light in recent times. It's very, you know, it's very shocking when you think about it. And because someone with that much power can either pay someone off, or like we heard about earlier with, you know, the unknown Orton being blacklisted. So it's just one of those strange things. And another thing that's come to light, we talk about women, the fabulous Moolah. as well, because we had Moolah. She was really high up on our WNR125. And though she predated the Divas division by many years, the fabulous Moolah is rightly regarded as the original WWE Diva. A veteran of the old territorial days, Moolah joined the WWF in the 1980s as a top female heel, feuding viciously with Wendy Richter and her celebrity ally Cyndi Lauper. That's what we've been seeing a lot, we've watched a bit recently. Richter was a central figure in an instant since dubbed the original screw job, in which she legitimately screwed out the Women's Championship by a poorly disguised Moolah, unconvincingly renamed as the Spider Lady. We know this. Richter quit the company in disgust, which while Moolah ruled the roost for the next 2 years. But the most controversial allegations evident Moolah were unquestionably those regarding the financial and sexual exploitation of several younger wrestlers. She set up a training school at which trainers were forced to live in her and fully pay rent towards properties on site before signing exclusive, tightly restricted deals with Moolah upon completion. Most ominously, several female wrestlers, including Sweet Georgia Brown and Luda Vachon, come forward over the years, claiming exploitation and sexual abuse at the hands of Moolah. Some even branded her a pimp who would loan them out to promoters or photographers as well.
Well, it's not just men who do the sexually assaulting. It is also, as you uncovered, it's women as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Like we say, we're going to dig in deep. There's going to be a lot of people you love. You're not going to be able to look at the same. But one of these guys you might not know about, and we talked about him. Weirdly enough, I've just gone to search on the WWE Network, and he doesn't come up, even though I know he's on here in a couple of matches. It is Bruiser Brody, and there is a lot of detail into this, and it's probably one of the most controversial figures of all time. Bruiser Brody, he came to the ring like a hurricane, making landfall with 6'8" beard mountain of anger and violence. By the time he'd been in the business for 5 years, he was already a legend. With his fur-covered boots and a length of chain, he swung recklessly through the smoke-thick air of arenas, large and small, across the world. He was Bruiser Brody.
And he died 29 years ago. What happened is well known. Brody was stabbed in Bayamon, Puerto Rico by Jose Gonzalez, who wrestled as the Invader and was booking the World Wrestling Council for Carlos Colon.
Now, Carlos Colon is the dad of Carlito and Primo and or Episoe, but part of the famous Colon family in Puerto Rico.
Gonzalez asked Brody to step into the locker room shower for a private conversation. But unbeknownst to Brody, Gonzalez held a knife hidden inside a towel in his right hand. No one knows what set it off. Gonzalez stabbed Brody twice in the chest and was trying to get at the big man again when wrestlers like TNT, better known as Savio Vega in the WWE, and Tony Atlas pulled him away.
Well, Brody lay bleeding on the shower floor for 30 minutes before an ambulance arrived, and then paramedics couldn't carry him to the ambulance. Atlas lifted Brody and helped him to the ambulance, and then he rode with him to the hospital. Wrestling journalist Mike Mooneyham wrote about these tense moments. Atlas recalls Brody saying, "Don't drop me, brother," as the wrestlers helped lift his fallen friend out of the ambulance. Atlas talked to Brody and slipped his shoes off as the wrestler desperately waited for medical attention, which was slow in arriving. Atlas says Brody had 2 8-inch cuts and his feet had turned blue. Stab wounds had punctured his liver, pierced his lung and severed arteries to his heart.
Atlas's patience grew thin while awaiting medical attention at the hospital. He eventually grabbed the doctor who was walking down the hall. "I've got a patient for you," the wrestler said urgently. "I'll be with you in a minute," replied the physician. That's when the 6'3", 290-pound strong man commandeered the doctor to Brody's room. When the doctor asked Brody how he was doing, he replied, "I'm just waiting on you, brother," says Atlas.
Well, at 4:30 a.m. the next day, Brody died. Gonzalez told the jury that he feared for his life when talking to Brody that day. The 5'8" grappler weighed a stocky 250 pounds, but he gave up nearly a foot in height and 50 pounds to Brody. If a disagreement became physical, it wasn't a stretch to realise who'd likely end up on the losing end. But Gonzalez had never said why things became physical. The prevailing opinion had always been that their argument was over payoffs or a match finish. Brody had a habit of letting promoters and bookers when he felt he wasn't getting paid adequately or used properly, and due to his status as an attraction rather than a territory wrestler, Brody could and would hold up promoters for more money.
Well, in an interview with WrestlingClassics.com, Hangman Bobby Jaggers told the interviewers that he did in fact believe Brody was murdered over payoffs, that Brody believed he was being shorted, and Jaggers also told the interviewers that he did about going back to Puerto Rico to work for Carlos Colon. Because if he had been the one who was killed, Brody would have gone back and continued to wrestle for WWC. But what if Jaggers was wrong? What if the reason for Brody's murder wasn't money?
Well, in Emerson Murray's book, Bruiser Brody, Crowbar Press, Dave Meltzer gave some insight into another reason for Gonzalez's actions. Brody and Gonzalez met in 1976 when they were both working for Vince McMahon Sr. in the WWF. Brody and Gonzalez wrestled one another at New York's Nassau Coliseum, where Brody allegedly brutalized Gonzalez for real. Meltzer said Gonzalez held a grudge for over a decade. Brody had that kind of reputation with many wrestlers. If he wanted to take liberties, he would. If he didn't want to cooperate, he wouldn't. As has been well documented, a cage match against Lex Luger. Now, I got a little bit of detail about. So yeah, we're talking about Lex Luger shoot, and I mean, this is the kind of thing that he did. So let's travel back to January 1987 in Florida. So it was a steel cage match between the promotion's golden boy, the flaxen-haired, mahogany-skinned Adonis Lex Luger, and the monstrous Santa Fe wild man Bruiser Brody. The cage looms ominously, and the crowd sense something shocking might happen. It happens, although it's not the kind of violence anybody suspected. The two men are in the ring, the cage door is locked, and the referee, a string bean even by wrestling ref standards, called for the bell. His name is Bill Alfonso, who had gone on to a career of some significance as a manager in ECW, including a bloody brawl with a female valet named Bugula McGillicuddy, where Alfonso supposedly lost a third of his blood. Well, anyway, the two wrestlers go at it. Wrestlers go at each other and they tie up. It's the way every wrestling match starts, or at least how they used to begin. Brody starts clubbing Luger with forearms. Luger is stunned, but he looks more confused than hurt. Maybe it's his over-muscled posture. Maybe it's his inability to look hurt. Maybe he's just confused. Luger was trained by Hiro Matsuda, a grappler well-versed in introducing muscle-bound blondes to the biz. He trained both Paul Orndorff and Hulk Hogan, the latter of which leg he's deliberately broke in his first session. This match is years later, of course, but Masuda's role was even more significant because those guys and guys like him became superstars. The muscle beach look meant money. Well, a minute in, Luger gets in licks and grabs an armbar. Nothing overtly amiss, but in retrospect it's hard to notice something awkward tension and back and forth. Brody was a legend of the late territorial era. In Japan they called him the intelligent monster, which is about right. Like many of the era stars, Brody never stayed any place for any length of time. He roamed the country and the globe, increasing his appearance fee with each brutal blow. Some days he was a villain, some days, more and more as time went on, he was a hero. That night in Florida, he was the bad guy, the mythical beast immune to pain. Luger had been trained to play Superman, to be the hero and brushed off attacks and overcome the odds. So what happens when the irresistible force meets the impervious object? Something ugly.
Around the 3-minute mark, Brody goes to toss Luger into the cage wall, but Luger reverses awkwardly like they didn't have it planned out, and Brody only halfway reacts to the pain. Luger tosses him into the cage again, and Brody sells it for a second or two, then more or less pretends it never happened. He tosses Luger into the wall, and Luger goes down like he's been hit by a truck. Overreacting now, probably to prove a point, Brody goes back. Luger follows up with a barrage of punches, and now things get really weird. Brody stops reacting. Luger postures up as if to say, what the fuck? More punches, more unresponsiveness. Brody isn't so much refusing to react, he's strangely unpresent, detached. He's not playing the indestructible monster, and he's just not playing along. He's not reacting to the punches because the punches are fake, and he doesn't have to. He's betraying the most baseline, the agreement to make the fake real, and Luger has no clue how to handle it.
Well, around the 6:30 mark, Luger plainly asked Alfonso what he should do. It's been 3 minutes since the match unravelled, but you can bet it felt like an hour to Luger. Brody was notorious as one of the most, ornery guys in the business, and not coincidentally one of the toughest. When he puts Luger to the mat with a single leg takedown, it's a legitimate move. Luger has no response. Brody holds him down for a few seconds, bullying him, exerting his superiority. Luger gets back up, exasperated. The fight returns to the cage wall, and somewhere in there, Luger conspires with Alfonso. When the two wrestlers clinch, and Lex keeps punching Brody, who is still refusing to act any pain, the ref goes to break them up, and Luger tosses Alfonso to the ground. The ref calls for disqualification, even though cage matches were almost no disqualification in those days, and Luger doesn't even wait for the cage door to be unchained from the outside. He vaults himself over the cage and hightails it up the aisle. Poof! He's gone.
The story goes that Luger didn't even shower. He gets his gear, hops in his car and leaves. A few weeks later, he'll be wrestling for the Jim Crockett promotion in North Carolina, sharing the ring on national television with the likes of Ric Flair. Within a few years, he'll be a TV champion and eventually heavyweight champion. Brody dies 8 months later in Puerto Rico, stabbed in his locker room shower by Jose Gonzalez, Lieutenant Area Promoter Carlos Colon.
So we're back to that, and like we talked about with Brody, he was, in many ways, the last of an outlaw breed of a wrestler who looked out for himself. He wrestled on his terms and no one else. If he thought a promoter or any other wrestler was looking to get over on him, watch out. Brody often refused to do jobs. He sometimes changed the finish when the match was going on. Brody was not about shooting on his opponent during a match to send a message to another worker or to a promoter. He was nomadic. He wouldn't hesitate to leave a territory without doing the honours for a local star on his way out. Brody also had a reputation for never losing a locker room fight. For one thing, he was legitimately tough, and he always landed the first punch. He didn't think Luger was ready for his push and resented it somewhat. And to make matters worse, he was hungover from the night before in an extremely bad mood. Like I said, the result was a really bad match. He stopped selling for Luger, shrugging off his punches, and suddenly revealing to Luger that he had prepped every finger for blading. The terrified Luger shoved the referee down and immediate DQ. So the story is Brody had, basically like Stanley knives into his fingers. He said he was going to cut up Luger. On the other hand, he took advantage of that attitude too. If you're in a ring with him, if you didn't have the guts to cut him off, he'd just eat you alive.
Well, Brody, Stan Hansen and Abdullah the Butcher were among the innovators of a stiff brawling style that featured blood and foreign objects. A precursor to the extreme wrestling phenomenon that came to the forefront in the 1990s and continues to do this day in promotions like CZW and IWA MS. But Brody could do anything in the ring. While he was not noted for his brawling style, he also wrestled a 1 hour draw with Ric Flair that's considered a classic wrestling match as well.
Well, Brody's killer was never brought to justice. Gonzalez stood trial for the murder but was acquitted, largely because there were no prosecution witnesses. Subpoenas for Dutch Mantell and Tony Atlas had been issued before the trial but arrived in the mail after the jury had already reached its verdict. In a lengthy article, Mantell shared what happened. Now, Dutch Mantell, you'll know him in WWE as Zeb Coulter. He said, I was told by the detectives that Jose Gonzalez would be charged with first-degree murder and advised me that when the time for the trial came, I would be subpoenaed and transported back to Puerto Rico to testify. They told me that airfare and hotel would be arranged for me and the security would be provided. That's what they said. However, that's not what they did. I was depressed when I left Puerto Rico, even more so when I got back to Birmingham. Don't blame you. But that's Birmingham, Alabama. If you've ever been to Birmingham, you know what I mean.
So he's actually taking a piss out of Birmingham whilst talking about a serious murder.
Exactly. I told my wife in detail everything that had happened. She told me that nothing would be done to Jose Gonzalez. I got mad at her. How could something not be done? I told her to wait and see.
I waited and I saw that she was right. I got 2 separate subpoenas for the trial. The first trial date was postponed. The second trial date was scheduled for January 23rd to the 20th, 1989. I still had my subpoena, but it was issued 1st of the 3rd, 89. But according to the post date, it was not mailed until the 13th of January, 89. That meant that it laid on somebody's desk for a full 10 days. Remember, the trial was to start on January 23rd. I received the subpoena January 24th. I'd already heard it by the time I'd opened the subpoena. I never heard from detectives again, not even to this day. Brody's murder and the subsequent botching of the Gonzalez trial makes it look like the fix was in. Atlas believes Brody was never going to be allowed to leave the hospital alive, and he had serious concerns for his own safety. Again, from the Mooneyham article.
Deep breath and pauses for nearly a minute when informed of a report that an American doctor who had been asked to assist with the surgery by 3 medical students he was training reportedly was ordered by security men to leave the operating room that night and later kept out of the post-mortem. Well, I should have never left the hospital, Atlas said, repeating the words for emphasis to no one in particular. I had a queasy feeling when I left. I should have never left that man's side, Atlas. Atlas says he didn't see anyone resembling bodies at the hospital. I didn't see any security. I was there for a long time, says Atlas, who estimates he was there for nearly 2 hours. If there was any security in the building while I was there, they would have probably thrown me out. They were scared to death of me in there. I was stomping around a hospital. You never see me mad. Vincent Mann has locked his office before because of me. I had a pretty good temper.
Atlas now feels he may have made a return to the outdoor stadium that night and gave others a report on Brody's condition. Atlas had been told at the hospital that his condition was stable. I got the funniest feeling in the world when I told someone about his condition and that they were going to visit him. I should never have said where he was. Why did I say anything? I'm stupid at times. My mouth flies open before my brain thinks. I was raised up with all dishonesty, but a lot of people use that as a weapon against you. Atlas says he returned to the stadium to wrestle the last match of the evening with the Iron Sheik.
Well, I'm working with the Sheik and I'm telling them the story in the ring. The Sheik went back and told the other boys. Abdullah the Butcher called a meeting the next morning. All of us went and refused to work the next day. We boycotted. No one really knew what was going on, but I told them. Atlas says he was a marked man because he was the only wrestler to publicly divulge a suspect 17 years ago. He went to a police department with Sea Killer while Samoan and gave authorities the story. Atlas was told he would be contacting him regarding the trial date. He never was. The same night he was warned by another wrestler to leave on the first plane out. Don't go to bed tonight. Go to the airport and catch the first flight out of here, he was told.
I would never have made it out of Puerto Rico, Atlas, says Atlas. Somebody would have come up beside me at the airport and stabbed me. He wasn't home an hour before getting a call from Colon. Brother, you deserted us. Atlas says Colon told him those were his words. I told him I didn't have anything against Brody or Jose, but after what I'd seen, I felt the best thing for me to do was to leave. He told me there was going to be a trial, and I told him to let me know when it was so I could come down. Atlas never got the call.
Well, as he lay in the shower, Brody was clutching a photograph of his then 7-year-old son. He asked Atlas to make a sketch of his son, but had kept hold of the photo when he walked to the shower to talk with Gonzalez. Brody's last words to promote Carlos Colon were, "Take care of my family." Colon and Victor Javica testified on behalf of Gonzalez at trial.
While he was researching his book, Murray was repeatedly warned away from learning more about Brody's murder. An interview in February 2016. Murray tracked down the coroner's report on Brody's death, which is included in the book, and attempted to obtain the transcripts of Gonzalez's trial. My wife and I spent a whole day, one day, just calling around trying to get copies of the court records, says Murray. Finally, we got somebody that was literally in the basement and he had all the court records there with her and she said, "Call me back if I'll go look for them." We call her back and she gets on the phone with my wife and is whispering. She says, "The court records aren't here. They're supposed to be here. I don't know where they are. Don't call here again," and hangs up. It's just the court transcripts of what was said, so why would you destroy that? But I was never able to find them, so I just put an extra little conspiracy thing in there. I don't know if they were destroyed or what, but the people down in me, they're not where they're supposed to be.
Well, Brody was 42 years old when he died. He left behind a widow Barbara and a young son Jeffrey. Jose and Gonzalez continued to work for Carlos Colon for many years and kept a picture of himself shaking hands with Brody in his office. He is 71 years old as of this podcast. Brody would have been the same age. Wrestling fans will never likely know the real reason Gonzalez stabbed Brody. Was it money, about a finish, or was it years of seething hatred from a match gone wrong? In the end, Tony Atlas says he's the closest thing to closure that someone can find. He says nothing justifies what happened that night. Brody only had one person to stand up for him, and I look at that person every day in the mirror. I know he had a lot of friends, but nobody ever tried to say anything or raise any money, and everybody tried to blame me because I didn't go back. Go back? The others didn't say anything. The dressing room was full of people. Tony Atlas was the only one who saw something. Were their eyes closed, or did they go blind? Every babyface on that card was in that dressing room, but they all went back to Puerto Rico and made themselves some money. I mean, Dan, what do you think of that Bruiser Brody fight? It's incredible, isn't it, you know?
It is certainly incredible, yeah. You know, it's It's one of them stories that obviously no one knows exactly what happened.
No.
And, you know, I don't think anyone will what happens. You know, that's obviously going to die with Gonzalez when he eventually rots in his dirty, stinking grave.
I know, yeah.
But, you know, would Lex Luger have stood up for him?
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? A babyface, especially with that reputation that Brody had, is that a part of it? You know, that kind of attitude where people were like, okay, that's why I'm not going to do anything. Or was it because he just wanted to be there to get money? I mean, Bruiser Brody was one of those few guys in wrestling, like we said, he didn't have a home base. He kept going from place to place, and he was his own. I know a few people wouldn't have liked that, you know, like Vince McMahon and WWF wouldn't have liked someone to have that kind of thing about them. And it's incredible to think, you know, he got stabbed and yet no one got charged from it. We're not sure what still happened. And that amount of time has passed. And what's another incredible thing, I'm just going to add to it, because it just reminded me, do you remember when John Cena was stabbed? Do you remember John Cena was, well, I'll tell you, Dan, alright? This storyline was it was in such bad taste, especially after we know Brody. It was October 2004, and John Cena just emerged triumphant in a best-of-5 series to regain the US title, riding high on a wave of hometown support in Boston. And his first order of business as champion was to make fun of Michael Cole for admittedly no reason. But who should arrive to interrupt the champ? It was Carlito. The apple-spitting Caribbean who made history as the only person to ever rip off Razor Ramon without ripping off Scarface. If you recall, Carlito's obsession in his early days was, or at least the aspiration to coolness, famously to caring, a spit in the face to people who don't want to be cool.
Carlito had said that he heard John Cena was the coolest guy in the WWE, but that it would be even cooler if he took his US title. That night, Carlito, as he was then known, or Carlito Caribbean Cool as he was then known, did the unthinkable by dethroning John Cena in his very first title defence. In the process of becoming the stupidest named United States champion since Hugh G. Reaction. Oh, Hugh G. Reaction. My bad. The bad news kept coming for Cena fans when Teddy Long informed a concerned SmackDown roster that John Cena would be out for months filming a movie. Kidding. The bad news is that the movie was The Marine. Kidding again. The bad news was that John Cena had been stabbed. SmackDown GM announced that following a nightclub melee, which is how Teddy Long pronounced melee, which is how Vince McMahon pronounces melee, the former champion has suffered several puncture wounds last Thursday night and is now struggling to save his kidney. The whole locker room, heels and faces alike, was shocked, except for Carlito, who told Teddy Long that a thug like Cena had it coming.
Well, obviously Carlito was a prime suspect in the stabbing, with witnesses placing him at the same club as Cena on the night of the stabbing. This created some unsettling parallels with the death of Frank Bruiser Brody Goodish. But WWE wouldn't go the direct route, having Carlito himself being the culprit. So what's even worse than that, it's Dad's promotion. Someone got stabbed and thought, Vince McMahon's like, I got a great idea, damn it. Why don't Carlito, you stab someone just like your old man? But anyway, they wouldn't have him, Carlito, as the culprit himself. Rumours have since spread that WWE, seeking realism, sought to sign New Jack. But anyway, I can finish that sentence. Instead, they brought in Aaron Algagar, who lasted thousands as edge stand-in as part of the Los Conquistadors. Carlito introduced Aguilera as his socio Jesus, or as the W Network have ended it, his sorcerer, Jesus. Jesus would serve as Carlito's very tall-looking bodyguard, dressed in hiked-up pants and suspenders. All that was missing was the chihuahua, pinstripes, and platform shoes. Given Jesus' shady past and the accusation he too had been in the club that night Cena was stabbed, the story became even more tasteless in its resemblance to the Brody case. After 7 weeks of recovery and a struggle to save his kidney, John Cena returned at Survivor Series without a scratch on him. And then would promptly go on to defeat Carlito for the US title.
His celebration was short-lived, however, when Jesus punched him in the kidney with Cena's own metal chain. This shelved Cena for a few more weeks until his triumphant return at Armageddon, where he would defend his US title against the world's tallest 6.5-footer. This time around, someone figured that maybe Cena should wear some gauze or something to sell his kayfabe life-threatening injury. Sure, it made no sense to wear a simple bandage to treat what was now an injury, but better late than never. Cena beat Jesus in a street fight, retaining his US title and vanquishing the injured Street Tough for good. At least, justice had been served, except for his stabbing case, which was never officially solved.
Well, we have got another comment. Tony Atlas was there at the time of the John Cena stabbing, and he said that he picked John Cena up and took him to the ambulance. No. It's shocking, though, isn't it? I mean, for WWE, I mean, we're talking about it and people go, that's out of order, damn it. Well, WWE took advantage of that and used it in the storyline, and I don't think a stabbing or anything like that should be allowed. And I think that's almost as controversial. Well, it's not almost as controversial as stabbing someone in the shower and killing them, but it's still horrible, you know? Anyway, we try and move on. A little bit more up to date. I say up to date. It's SmackDown 272 that we're going to watch.
On November the 4th.
Yeah, a day after someone's birthday, I do believe. Well, November 4th, 2004 episode of SmackDown Angle challenged contestants from WWE reality show Tough Enough to best him in the ring. The probable narrative was Big Bad Olympian destroying a handful of green upstarts. Let's see how he goes up against Chris the Rocky.
Well, you can see Kurt Angle's amateur side. There's 2 referees in the ring, by the way.
Yeah, referees checking, making sure everything's fair. And the Rocky, 22 years old from New York, and Angle is on top, course Olympic gold medalist. And he pins him. And do you know, in the process of this, Kurt Angle broke his ribs.
Whose ribs?
Kurt Angle just broke Chris Rocky's ribs in that there. Right there. So who's going to be the next victim then?
Daniel Puder puts his hands up.
There we go, Daniel Puder. What can he do?
Daniel Puder, 23, from California. Puder's got a background in MMA. I think he's giving Angle a good run for his money.
UFC chant and Angle. Got the back of Puder trying to pick him up.
Oh, but Puder's got the Kimura locked.
He's got Angle in serious trouble. And he's got it bent back now. Shoulders were down, but Kurt Angle refused to shake Puder's hands.
And he's visibly pissed off with him.
He's not happy, is he? You make a jackass out of me. You make a fucking idiot out of me, huh? You make an ass out of me in front of all the fans. You can see Kurt. His arm hurts. Let's see what he says. And none of you are tough enough. Well, I disagree with that.
I too disagree as well.
Yeah, I think after tussling for you, like you said, Puder grabbed Angle's right arm, forcing it an awkward position. This is what Puder said about it.
I caught him in a key lock, pulled his arm into Kimura and tried to snap his arm off. The referee watched as Angle's arm went further and further the wrong way. He knew how to do something. Disaster neared. He delivered a hurried 3 count despite Puder's shoulders not being fully down on the mat. Angle hopped up and shouted at his opponent.
He berated Puder, who stood face to face with him, unmoving. To no one's surprise, Angle said he was less than happy backstage. No shit. WWE made Angle look a dominant and master mat wrestler. What would it have done for its credibility to have some guy the majority of fans didn't know beat him decisively, or even worse, shit his arm? Puder did his best to turn those few seconds into a name-making opportunity. Despite the noise he made, eventually his notoriety faded.
Puder was an unknown before the incident, and for the most part he still is. Having won Tough Enough himself a WWE contract, it was a contract that Puder had legitimate gripe over. Promised as $1 million contract, it turned out to be a non-guaranteed, and the money came in slowly over time. He only lasted with the company briefly, appearing at Armageddon 2004 and a 2005 Royal Rumble. Then the WWE gave him the choice of going down to a developmental territory or being released. His moment of defiance likely wrecked his chances of making it with the company. Would WWE have made the ultimatum had he not done what he did on SmackDown? WWE and pro wrestling in general is a business where performers must trust each other with their bodies, must protect each other.
The fact that Puder showed up Angle, coupled with a lack of remorse the incident, made him less vulnerable than the sum of his talents. Paul Heyman was big on Puder. He said Daniel is 6'3", great genetics, great look, good athletic ability, kicks like a mule. Despite all those attributes, Puder remains a WWE footnote. How differently would the career have looked had he not tried to turn Kurt Angle's arm into the Thanksgiving wishbone?
Well, after WWE released Puder in 2005, he wrestled briefly for both Ring of Honor and before entering the world of MMA. Even when he left pro wrestling, when the WWE should have been a blip in his rear view, he clung to the moment of triumph against Angle. Oh, he had I Hurt Kurt shirts. God, that's a tongue twister. He had
I Hurt Kurt shirts.
He did, yes. He had I Hurt Kurt shirts made and wore them proudly in interviews. He insulted Angle. In an article, Pewter called him a wimp. He went on to say, I knew I had trained with guys that are as good as him. I wasn't really scared of him. When speaking with another interviewer, he said that Angle was a done amateur wrestler when they locked up. So many of Pewter's interviews after the incident have been Angle-centred. Angle, on the other hand, has said very little about it. Pewter went undefeated in his MMA career. He amassed 8 wins, 3 by submission. And for WWE fans, he'll mostly be remembered for the submission he would have had on Kurt Angle, had a quick-thinking referee not intervened. Or perhaps they won't remember him at all. Had WWE turned a real-life tension between Pewter and Angle into a storyline, or had Angle accepted an MMA fight with Pewter, that incident would have been the catalyst for something more memorable. As it stands, the Angle versus Pewter shoot remains an odd moment in time. A man trying to force the spotlight onto himself, only to be able to hold it there briefly. Well,
Yeah.
so what are your thoughts on that then?
Look, right, I'll tell you something, right? I'll tell you something now. If I'm given the opportunity in this kind of thing, of they're always going to try and embarrass you, make you look like an idiot. If someone says to me, right, you go and you try and take Kurt down, if I get an opportunity, I'm going to take him down. You know, and I say, if you get caught like that, it's Kurt Angle's fault for being overconfident. And then he's got the thing to say afterwards, oh, it's not meant to be real. Well, you're beating the shit out of these fucking guys, and yeah, you're learning lessons or whatnot. But still, you know, I'm going to take my chance. Would you have took your chance against Kurt, or you know, beat you up a little bit?
Well, I would have tried to give him a good match. I wouldn't have, tried to go out there to get him in a Kimura lock to make him look like an idiot. Because A, you know how much pull Kurt Angle's got around.
Yeah, that's
so
true, yeah.
I would be buried.
Yeah.
And B, if you'd have had a good match, and then you could have, after it had all gone down, you could have lasted a bit longer than the previous bloke, and just tried to give him a good bit of a match.
Yeah.
And use that kind of spotlight, because in the end he won the Tough Enough competition, and he could have gone on to become something better. Unfortunately for him, the bloke who came second place, Mike Mizan.
Yeah. What happened to him anyway? Yeah. Oh, he's hosted SmackDown, wasn't he? Yeah, 11 years ago. I remember that.
But the Miz is stood there looking at them all. You would have thought, well, after having Paul Heyman's backing as well, he's a big guy. He's got an MMA background.
Yeah.
He could have been a replacement for Brock Lesnar.
Well, exactly. Or it's definitely used on the roster. But this is the interesting thing, isn't it? We talk about the Miz making the most of the opportunity, and it's controversial people. He was hated by the hardcore fans for not having any talent. The locker room hated him. Everybody said all this about him, and the crowd's starting to get on his side. Even you're starting to like the Miz a little bit. So that's what I'm saying. After a while, you gain respect, and I mean, for me, I would have done it at that moment in time. But I think you're right. If he'd have thought about it, longevity and all, But as we've seen, the WWE just churns through so much talent, so much mid-card talent, that not a lot sticks around anyway. But yeah, I mean, that's controversial characters so far. What do you think so far, Dan?
It's certainly been controversial. I think it's a bit more dark controversial characters.
Yeah.
But, it's stuff that about, people that other wrestling fans might not have known, or, they might have a look into things themselves and, try and give their unique angle on it.
Yeah, exactly. We've had the plane ride from hell. We've had Dino Bravo. We had the missing Orton, as I'm going to call him. Talked about Renegade. We've had Sid Vicious and Arn Anderson incident. We had Mike Corson, and one night stand. About Jess Carr and the previous female referee. Moolah, Bruiser, Brody that we just talked about. And of course the John Cena stabbing, Daniel Pewter and Kurt Angle. But there's still so much to come. I've got a mic drop before the end of this podcast as well about one man. So let's...
What have you found out about me? I thought I kept that stuff hidden.
All right, so we need a story to lighten us up a little bit. We've got a little bit dark here, a little bit dark. So have you got a story that can lighten the mood?
How about one involving Hacksaw Jim Duggan?
What could go wrong there?
Exactly that. Well, Vince McMahon effectively killed off kayfabe himself forever in front of the New Jersey State Senate when he admitted wrestling was predetermined in 1989. Big shock.
What?
But for many, Hacksaw Jim Duggan and the Iron Sheik already done it themselves in 1987. The two were heated rivals, with Duggan as the incredibly enthusiastic American supporter and the Iron Sheik as the American-hating Iranian. Thousands of fans across the country watched them battle it out in sold-out arenas, but the two would sometimes get these shows by one of those trips blew the lid off their secret bromance and got them both kicked out of the company. They were pulled over during a routine traffic spot and cops found them with marijuana and cocaine. This in itself wouldn't have been a big deal if they weren't together. But seeing as the hated rivals hanging out in their free time blew things up, and Vince was furious as the story hit papers across the country and fired. Many fans suspected that wrestling wasn't on the up and up at the time, but it became almost impossible to believe after the incident. In Bret Hart's book, he noted that Vince talked with the entire roster about what happened, and for the absolute necessity of kayfabe, that didn't last too long, as 2 years later, Vince did away with the entire concept himself. And years later, in a somewhat similar situation, Rob Van Dam and Sabu were arrested on drug charges after being pulled over. And while it certainly hurt both their careers, it didn't cause the ripples throughout the entire industry like Duggan and Sheik did.
No, he just lost the ECW and WWE Championship that he won 5 days earlier, RVD. But yeah, incredible to think Vince McMahon was more annoyed the fact that we've seen together as opposed to the cocaine and marijuana being in the car. But this was the 80s and everything. Well, let's just say drug use is running wild, shall we? But
well, we cannot confirm nor deny that a majority of the locker room were or were not taking substances, shall we say?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So let's cheer things up even more by speaking about Muhammad Hassan. He's 6'4", and he was born 1981, so he's 35 years old. But better known. He is an Italian-American, and he's a retired professional wrestler now, Mark Julian Capone, but he was better known as playing an Arab-American, Muhammad Hassan.
Well, he made his WWE television debut on Raw as Muhammad Hassan on December 13th, 2004, in an in-ring segment with Mick Foley. After wrestling dark matches and house shows for about 2 months, he also wrestled a dark match against Sergeant Slaughter at Taboo Tuesday. He described himself as an Arab-American wrestler, wanting relief from the increased prejudice and stereotypes created by the 9/11 attacks. As he enters professional wrestling, he then concluded with a controversial extension of hands and praise to Allah.
At WrestleMania 21 on April 3rd, 2005, Hassan and Daivari were featured in the segment Hulk Hogan by Contrevesial Charcters. Hogan's still coming to the rescue of Eugene, who was being attacked by the two men. The next night on Raw, Hassan and Daivari came out to confront and assault fan favourite Shawn Michaels, and of course Hulk Hogan would come and make the save and accept Michaels' offer of teaming up against Hassan and Daivari.
Bischoff refused, but did tell Michaels to find a partner and he would grant a match. Michaels then made a plea for Hogan to come back and team with him. At Backlash on May the 1st, Hassan and Daivari lost to Hogan and Michaels, with Daivari being pinned. Hassan would blame and attack Daivari for the loss the next night on Raw. Well, in one of the most controversial moments in WWE history, on the episode of SmackDown taped 4th of July 2005, the SmackDown general manager, Theodore Long, put Hassan in The Undertaker at the Great American Bash and placed Daivari in a match that night against The Undertaker. Daivari was defeated, but Hassan began to pray on the ramp, summoning 5 masked men dressed in black shirts, ski masks and camo pants. Armed with clubs and a piano wire, they beat and choked The Undertaker out and put Hassan and they beat and choked The Undertaker out, and Hassan put him in the camel clutch.
Afterwards, the masked men lifted Daivari above their heads and carried him away. 3 days later, the London bombings took place. The footage aired unedited on the UPN in the United States and on the score in Canada, with an advisory warning shown several times during the broadcast. It was removed for the Australian and European, including UK broadcasts.
The angle elicited national attention Post, TV Guide and Variety and other major media outlets. In response to the criticism, UPN decided that it would monitor the storyline closely and that it did not want the Hassan character on its network that week. Hassan later delivered a promo to the live crowd for the July 14, 2005 airing episode of SmackDown. But when UPN announced that the segment would be edited, WWE decided to host a video of the segment on its official website. In the segment, Hassan reiterates that he is an Arab American and that the American people automatically and unfairly assume that he is a terrorist.
Well, despite being in character, he referred to the real-world media coverage of the storyline, singling out the New York Post Don Kaplan by name and denouncing his description of the events on SmackDown, such as the Kaplan's comment on the masked men being Arabs in ski masks. July 14, 2005 episode of SmackDown, Hassan's absence was explained by a statement delivered by his lawyer Thomas Whitney, who said Hassan refused to appear on the show until the Great American Bash due to the way he'd been treated by the media and the WWE fans.
Well, it was revealed in late July 2005 that UPN had pressured WWE to keep Hassan off their network, effectively removing him from SmackDown. Hassan lost the match to The Undertaker at the Great American Bash and was written off, with The Undertaker doing a last ride for an open stage ramp onto a concrete floor, where it was reported that he sustained serious injuries and had to be rushed to a nearby medical facility. Apparently a solution aimed to end the Hassan character.
Well, several days later, WWE.com hosted a video of a kayfabe announcement for Theodore Long, which he reiterates the stipulation that Hassan would no longer appear on SmackDown. Due to increasing public pressure, WWE had forced to drop the character altogether, send the Kapani and Daivari back to their developmental territories to alter their gimmicks. This resulted in huge fan backlash, mostly because Hassan was at the height of his notoriety. Kapani was released from the WWE contract on July 21st, 2005, announcing his retirement from professional wrestling.
In subsequent years, it was revealed that Hassan had been planning to receive a major push, eventually winning the World Heavyweight Championship from Batista at SummerSlam. In turn, which would have made him the youngest heavyweight champion in WWE history, breaking the great Randy Orton's record.
Exactly, so that's how close it became. They're really going to go for it, and then The Undertaker literally last riding Hassan.
He buried him.
Out of WWE television. And then in 2016... Kapani was named as one of the members of the class action lawsuit filed against WWE, which alleged that wrestlers incurred traumatic brain injuries during the tenure and the company concealed the risks of injury. Now, don't get me wrong, they're going to find this out soon, like the concussions in American football. You can't go and hit your head every day without having complications, and when WWE more open to that. But I heard a great thing the other day. You know Jeff Jarrett, we talk about him.
Yeah.
He went into rehab because of his alcoholism and leaving GFW. The WWE actually are paying for the treatment to help him out. And after all Jarrett's problems with Vince McMahon, it's good that the WWE are actually doing something about it. And I don't care if it is, publicity for good publicity's sake. But still, it's a nice thing to do, especially with Jeff Jarrett struggling. So that was nice. Talked about terrorism, wasn't it? Do you think it's acceptable to have a character like that on WWE TV, Dan? Or do you think it's too far?
I think it is a bit too far in this day and age, yeah. I understand, it could well be intended as lightheartedness and, not to be taken, or to be taken with a pinch of salt, basically.
Yeah.
But you're always going to get people saying, this is going on, that's going on. And, it's always going to cause backlash for someone.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Especially the way WWE do things. They've done shocking things like this before when they said, Vladimir Putin with Rusev, you could argue that. You could argue Saddam Hussein with Sergeant Slaughter back in the day when they were pretending to do that. I think the best way of doing it is Mustafa Ali, 205 Live. If you're going to have a character like that, have him against people think, not have him, coming out dressed like Daivari is on 205 Live. Have him as his own character. Because... I know they want to say, we base it on real stories. At the end of the day, there's a majority of children watching as well. And it's just in good taste, And what we've talked about today on this podcast is WWE being in poor taste. We talk about the Bruiser Brody thing and then taking advantage of that and possible rumours of what happened. Cheer me up. I mean, what's going to cheer me up? What's next on the... I'm laughing because I know what it is.
What, Jimmy?
Yeah.
Well, many people behind the scenes in the WWF believe Jimmy Snuka was a murderer, including higher-up members of management. They just didn't seem to care. In 1983, Snuka was travelling with girlfriend Nancy Argentino when, according to his version of the story, she said she had to go to the bathroom while they were travelling to a show. He stopped, she relieved herself, and then on the way back to the car, she slipped and hit her head on the rock. Later that night, when he returned from the show to their motel, he found her unconscious. She passed hours later. According to the more plausible theory, Snuka pushed her against the wall, she lost consciousness and never woke up. Snuka would never keep his story straight. Even years after the incident, it continued to change. The autopsy was damning.
Well, autopsy findings show Argentino suffered from more than 24 cuts and bruises, a possible sign of mate abuse on her head, ear, chin, arms, hands, back, buttocks, legs and feet. And forensic pathologist who performed the autopsy wrote at the time that the case should be investigated as a homicide until proven otherwise.
Well, the autopsy, it said that her death was caused by repeatedly being hit with a blunt object. So basically, not one slip.
Yeah.
Somehow, this wasn't enough to arrest him. And after the incident, Vince McMahon helped meet with police investigators along with Snuka. Despite knowing how shady this all looked, he kept him on the payroll and brought him back multiple times throughout the years, as we saw at the Royal Rumble event when he went against Piper.
Exactly.
In September of 2015, Snuka was finally arrested, though later deemed mentally unfit to stand trial. He will be re-evaluated in early 2017, and WWE, of course, quickly distanced himself from the former superstar, but only after it became a national news story.
Yeah, well, he's dead now anyway, so at least we don't have to worry about that anymore. But, like you said, 32 years after the incident, he was arrested, and that is the oldest case resulting charges in Lay County history. That's amazing. And like you said, yeah, illness and death, but WWE do look at him as a legend. I had a few things to say. I've had a few things to say about Jimmy Snuka in the past, about the way WWE treated him, or, looked at him. I was never a fan of Jimmy Snuka. Look at the evidence. That's all I'm not saying, because I don't want to be sued by the Jimmy Snuka family. But if you look at the evidence, you look at the anger of someone like this, and what we've seen today is a lot of wrestlers, a lot of anger issues as well, not be able to control themselves. We talk about Mike Awesome, even though I like him, and what ended up happening to him. And of course, Jimmy Snuka.
Well, it was early 80s and there was not as much drug testing back in them days.
Yeah. Well, the drug testing was them going, yeah, let me have some of that.
Yeah, let's test this drug out.
Yeah.
And, Vince McMahon may be stuck by Snuka's side because he was the one suggesting that Snuka needed to get a bit bigger. So, he was saying, I know a fella that can sort you out some stuff, but it's gonna fuck your head up basically. So you can certainly see it does look like Snuka would be guilty of murder.
Yeah, well, yeah, this is the thing, isn't it? So,
but we cannot confirm nor deny that they are our own thoughts, and we believe that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, exactly. We cannot. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, though, isn't it? We talk about Jose Gonzalez managing to live to 71 at the moment, and Jimmy Snuka managed to live to a ripe old age as well. So it's good for some people, I suppose. A light one actually. This is, and I'm not joking when I say light. This is a little bit better. Tim Cornette and Santino Marella, because this recently came to light. I don't know if anybody has heard the story. Like I say, we're a little bit late to the party. But we don't want to miss out on the Jim Cornette Santino yelling at each other in the Detroit Convention Hall.
Well, at an event held by Michigan Promotion, XIC, on Saturday, 7th of October, the two men revisited an old beef. The story goes all the way back to 2005 in OVW, then WWE's developmental territory. Morella was caught on camera laughing and generally not acting terrified during a Bogeyman segment. A breach of a breach of kayfabe which set Cornette off. This led to the legendary manager and promoter slapping Santino, an act for which he was fired. And reports from the Kobo Centre say the two men appeared to be cordial to one another, at least at the start of their appearance. But things got heated a short time later. An account from a correspondent claims Santino asked Cornette what he thought of him. Voices rose, profanities were hurled, and corny Morella again.
The he said continued afterwards, with a report claiming either Cornette or both men were asked to leave the venue by security, or that the Louisville Lip chose to leave on his own. Either way, the promoter doesn't seem pleased by losing a couple of his draws due to the incident. So factor that in, you're having the inevitable "is this a work?" comes with everything in this sport performance art. Cornette, of course, already addressed the incident on Twitter. He says, "Sorry to anyone I missed at Kobo. Some comedy midget wants to slap me again so he could sue since he's unemployed." Walked out instead. In the meantime, Santino Morella released a fucking... hang on a minute. I've literally printed out this statement and it's 28 pages long. And just read the best. "He's complete bullshit from head to toe. My original stance today was to let him rant and not to stoop to his level. Some would say he's a good bullshitter, but he's actually been called a compulsive liar." What else we got? So he talks about the story of moving in. Boogeyman, it's all on YouTube, you can see it. That's what he said. It is all on YouTube, everybody. Just Google that.
Actually, I encourage one to do so you can see for yourself that I'm not laughing, hence BS number 1. There was never any agenda to the whole thing. He wasn't trying to be anything other than a fan. I wasn't part of the show. Heck, it was his first time there. And he was so green to everything. Then
someone to the back where Cornette is flipping out and proceeds to slap me several times. He claims 17, but let's call that bullshit number 2.
No idea what he was even talking about. I remember saying just that, which of course got him even more mad. And he said, "You are nothing in this business." And I'm like, "Yeah, no shit. I literally just signed up here a month ago." LOL.
Right, where we go. He spoke to the Boogeyman. And Boogeyman said everything was all right. Oh, he said that Boogeyman was furious at me and wanted to kick my ass. So years later, after I got to know Marty pretty well, I asked him about that night, and he said it was just a wardrobe malfunction.
They failed to calculate the effect that the ring lights would have on Boogeyman's makeup, and it was proving to be an issue. Thus, the original source of that segment's frustration is what I always thought. So where are we at now? BS number 3?
Well, Cornette was subsequently fired and pretty much resented me ever since. I don't hate him. I don't hate anyone, but he was in the wrong, and everyone knows it, especially him. That's why he so desperately tries to put me down and make excuses as to why he acted the way he did. It's him, because you're an insecure, poor excuse of a man.
He's endured much more than a slap or 7 in his life. He does have a few friends in the business that still like Cornette. So he thought perhaps we could have a good working relationship if things had been different. He was not opposed to learning from him. In fact, he regrets not being able to.
WWE career was a dream come true, amazing 10 years, and now he's had to retire thanks to 2 neck surgeries. He's forever grateful for all the fans across the world. Oh no, he thanked Johnny Ace or Johnny Laurinaitis for not holding the incident against me. He didn't even know what he was referring to. He said he had to chat him. So trying to say that I was gifted my job is a big pile of BS. Number 4, in fact. So BS number 4 there. This business has evolved. It will continue to evolve. Those who can't adapt, can't evolve, get left behind. And please don't hate on WWE. It makes you look really pathetic. Vince has done a million times more for this business than you ever will be credited for. Bottom line, he's one of the most successful people in the world, and, well, you are definitely not Vince. Put it this way, when I grow up, I want to be like Vince, but if I ever end up like you, I will consider my life a failure.
Little does Jim know that all these countless negative comments and rants just make him look like an unconfident, bitter person that has no class. That's why I never made a big deal about it, because he was already doing a great job of tarnishing his own legacy. He shits on the comedic component and my in-ring ability, but I'm from OVW, so he's actually shitting on himself from the company that he partly owns. He's also shitting on his friends, Rip, Danny and Al, that all had a hand in my development and training. Plus, I can lift off as many great and iconic comedic wrestlers. First and foremost is the late, great Bobby Heenan.
Oh, bless him. Fast forward to the Cobra sent in Detroit last Saturday, or when he wrote this, and his table was just 2 tables. So at night at some point we'll have a chance to meet, as in actually meet for the first time, since I don't consider our first interaction an actual meeting, because no greetings or pleasantries were exchanged.
Well, as I'm heading back down the hallway after I get a bite to eat, it's Jim and I walking straight towards one another. And no one is around. What a perfect opportunity to talk it over and hopefully hash things out. I say, hello, sir, and I extend my hand to shake hands. After all, why not? Peace is better than enemies, right? He looked shocked to hear my real voice. Lol. Mark. He then proceeds to try and tell me about what happened 12 years ago, like I wasn't there. Insults me, disrespects me, then tries to walk away. I remember being disappointed in how poorly he was dressed that day. He made no effort at all to make himself presentable to meet his fans. Visibly dirty clothing and in poor health. I actually felt bad for him. Until we decided to beach once again.
Well, I said to him that I was hoping we could walk away from this with a newfound respect for one another after possibly talking it out, and then always regretted not learning from him. I always hope for the best in people, like my mum. He laughed and said he had no respect for me, called me a joke, and then he should slap me again. That's when I said to myself, fuck this guy. There is no way in hell he's going to punk me off after what he did all those years ago. So I said, do it. Please, slap me again and see what happens. Trust me, Jim, it's not sue you. That's what you see in the video. Me cutting him off and saying, do it then. You can't make a claim like that and then walk away, at least not where I'm from. It was at that moment I saw his true colours. He tried to run away and actually cried out for security. I guess his wrestling instincts kicked in because he was a classic heel. Brave guy when backup is around, but when it's just him and the babyface alone in the end, he begged off.
What happened to slapping me the next time you saw me, Jim? Then he saw a fan, pretty personnel. His mock bravery started to kick in, and he started to put on a show. Cornette style. He was a complete bastard, as I expected he would be. If it ended up going down this way, when it was just the two of us going nose to nose, eye to eye, quite frankly a coward, and believe me, I called him those exact words to his face. Coward and bitch. All he did was turn another shade of red. He saw it in his eyes. He can never say anything about it again because he's just backed down after shooting his mouth off. So that's bullshit. Shit, I lost count.
Yeah, he's lost count. And he also said
5.
He also said publicly that he decided to leave when we all know he was kicked out, escorted out in fact, taken out like the trash that he is. So don't forget to add another one on the BS list. It was a perfect ending. The bully got what he deserved in the end. Sorry for all the fans that came out to know. I really tried to put it all behind us. Cornette had other plans. Sometimes we just have to take a stand.
I hope the show was still a blast. Well, I'm sure it was because there was a great bunch of guys performing that night. So now I have some closure from the original incident. I get to return to my wonderful Canadian life and come home to my hot Polish fitness model wife. This week we're going camping up north to enjoy the beauty of Mother Nature, kayaking, hiking, fishing, etc. Let me guess, you're going to go on a few rants this week. Truly pathetic, bro. Sad. But hey, enjoy them, because for a brief moment people are talking about you, and we all know how important that is to you. In the wrestling business, you're always one of the headline away from having your spotlight taken away. And since the Shield has reunited, well, I guess it's gone. The end. Sincerely, and so help me Jesus, Anthony Corelli.
I don't think he seems that bothered about it. He's over it, you know. I don't think he's got any lasting feelings. So who are you on? You on Team Cornette or Team Morella on that one?
It's got to be Santino.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Well, do you really think Jim Cornette called him a joke? If Cornette said that to him, he said you're a joke and a comedy wrestler. Fair play to Jim Cornette for actually saying that to Santino. And it's the old school style, the promoter. We talk about the old style ones. Going back in the back and you getting a slap. You know what I mean? What have you done that for? But it's the Kurt Angle, Daniel Puder thing again, isn't it? Of the older guy being in the business has to teach the young guy lessons and he thinks he's fucking around. Of course, Santino then got some hard feelings afterwards. But I think it's all good. I'm Jim Cornette. That's a bit lighter to everything else we've had. I mean, we've had suicide and murders and oh my. Right. So what else you got, Dan?
Well, I will never do business with that man again. And those are the words attributed to Vince McMahon. Randy Savage's name was brought up to return to WWE years after he left the company. It was a strange statement after all. Everyone came back to do business with Vince. Everyone he felt betrayed or hurt by returned. Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, time and time again. But not Randy Savage. There's no doubt a Savage return at any point after 1994 would have been big business, but Vince simply wasn't interested. In fact, he was quite antagonistic to any suggestion about it. After the end of the WCW and before Savage's passing, the extent of the Macho Man in WWE was basically one magazine interview and a series of his matches released on DVD, which did not feature any commentary or new footage of him. It is believed by many wrestling insiders and higher-ups in WWE that it was an improper relationship between Stephanie McMahon, when she was perhaps 17, and Savage that sealed his fate on never returning for even a single night. And to this day, Steph has never denied it.
Has anybody answered a question?
Well, it would be impossible for her to have not heard the rumour, and one simple tweet would have gone a long way to dispelling the controversy.
Hi guys, hope you're watching Raw tonight. Plus, wasn't touched by Macho Man Randy Savage.
No.
Exactly, yeah. Emoji. I mean, what do you want from that?
It would have gone a long way to dispelling the controversy, and Randy's own brother hasn't ruled it out. When he did put him in the Hall of Fame, it received relatively underwhelming hype that seemed ill-fitting to his pop culture legacy. Now, this is a long-standing rumour that simply will not end. Whatever it was between Savage and Vince had to have been bad and quite personal.
Well, this is the thing, we're never going to find out, are we? Macho Man's dead, and Stephanie will never talk about it, even in later days. We know how well a McMahon can keep a secret. We found that out early, haven't we? So, I mean, what do you think? Do you think it happened, Dan, or do you think it is literally just a story?
Well, Vince, he's not shy about bringing wrestlers back that are racist. He's not shy, He accepts quite a lot of other things, drug abuse, steroid abuse, even a murderer he's brought back.
Yeah.
So, what else could Savage have done that would stop him into the company at any point whatsoever?
Well, this is the thing. What kept him away for so long? We just don't know. Maybe, because they left on good terms in 1994 when Macho Man left Monday Night Raw, his commentary. Vince McMahon gave him a glowing, recommendation because Macho said he still wanted to be a wrestler. He went over to WCW, I'm honestly not sure. Not sure what it was. But it's interesting. Everything else we've heard tonight has been pure fact. And, like I say, unsolved mysteries and stuff like this. With this one, we're just not sure. And this is our one tonight where we're just saying anything really could happen. Do you know what I mean? We just don't know what happened there.
No.
When WWE brought back the Ultimate Warrior after a long and often contentious absence from the company in order to induct him into the Hall of Fame in 2014, it was a heartwarming story of triumph, redemption that could only have ever take place in the squared circle. The day after his induction, he delivered a now legendary promo on Monday Night Raw where he seemingly foreshadowed his own death. And then a mere 24 hours later, he suffered a massive heart attack. If that had been left at that, could almost forgive WWE for leaving out the not-so-heartwarming part of the story. Namely, a series of homophobic and racist remarks made in speeches on college campuses and since deleted blog posts in the mid-late 2000s during Warrior's stint as a conservative commentator. Only it wasn't left at that. In the following years, WWE proceeded to make Warrior a centrepiece of their burgeoning corporate philanthropy efforts, creating the Warrior Award to be given out an elaborate ceremony every year to a winner who deserves it in unwavering strength and perseverance, and who lives their life with courage and compassion that embodies the spirit of the Ultimate Warrior. This year, the company merged its Warrior branding in its longest outstanding partnership with Susan G. Komen Foundation with the Unleash Your Warrior campaign. Various W superstars and several breast cancer survivors have been sporting the likeness of the Warrior on television all month as part of the campaign that the company has been relentlessly promoting on its social media, Unleash Your Warrior. But now it's probably a good time to quickly go over a few of the things that this man said during his stint as an aspiring conservative firebrand in the 2000s. All these blog posts have been deleted, but through the magic of the internet archiving, I was able to track them down. So this is him on the Hurricane Katrina victims. Dan?
Anyone who expresses sentiments like, how could they let this hurricane come to our lives, is a kook as far as I'm concerned. Those that somehow believe people are directly to blame for the happening of a natural catastrophe don't deserve to be heard. In fact, they should be told to shut the hell up. These kinds of people contribute nothing towards repairing things to a better state. Truth is, these people thrive on despair and disarray. Chaos, mentally and physically, in the way they conduct their lives, is nothing new to them. They forged their whole lives in it and around it. This hurricane to them was nothing more than a rearranging of the furniture. If we could be shown what general conditions they lived in before the hurricane, we would see that had little respect for what they did have. We would see just how unorganised, unclean and dysfunctionally they lived. They never gave a care for orderliness or function before. Now that they can get someone's attention who will possibly take over the responsibility of their life for them, they go on these tirades about how their life has been ruined. Their lives were already in ruin. Self-ruin. Ruined by the bad choices they made over and over. Beginning with the choice to sit on their arse, expecting someone else to hand them a wonderful, beautiful, healthy and wealthy life. And excuse me for being the one to say so, but if you have a dozen kids and no husband to be a father, there are some holes in your life plan that should be sewed up.
Not too bad, was it? Not too bad.
Well, so the term unleashing your inner warrior is to say that women that have 12 kids and no dad should have their gash sewn shut.
Yes, and in case it isn't abundantly clear just who those people were, the demographic makeup of Katrina victims should clear it up. Let's have a look. Oh yes, Rory is referring to poor, mostly black New Orleanians. Poor, mostly black New Orleanians without cars. Surely it can't get any worse.
Don't call me Shirley, but I'm sure you have something else lined up.
On the injustice of Martin Luther King Day. Martin Luther King Day, I mean...
One of the most famous black men in American history, nay, history.
Well, let's see what he says. Martin marched a few times from Selma, Alabama to Montgomery, Alabama. It's only about 40 miles, and he walked along paved roads with security escorts and modern comforts and conveniences. He wrote a few jailhouse letters, plagiarized a great many speeches, and played up to his last name, King, as if he was one. He led his best rally amid the monuments of Washington, D.C. He preached behaviour, while he at the same time committed adultery many publicly variable times. Oh, and he had a dream, one to see a race of people freed completely from discriminate oppression. It can't get any worse though, can it? I mean, yeah, strong words there, but, you know, Martin Luther King.
On his speech on queer studies at a Conservative Alliance event at DePaul University.
Right.
One guy without his husband and two physically repulsive butch dykes slurping on one another's tongues. Really? On the front row, had a real hard time cozying up to my principled heterosexual obstinacy. So... in an act of pure selfish pleasure, the guy got himself physically thrown out by the masculine security guard, unmistakably loving every single masochistic, manhandled moment of it. There's more.
There's more.
And the dykes?
Hey, what?
Well, they ran out screaming and yelling like speared wild boars that I was...
Sorry.
That I was a homophobe for making my remarks.
What? I don't see that.
Rumour has it
that
they decided to exit more because I was getting simulated by watching their poorly performed two non-heat act. The incredible selfless sacrifices the liberal loons will make on behalf of their case warms my heart and makes my whole body laugh.
So he's on a roll here. All right, what could be worse? Oh, on the death of actor Heath Ledger, who played a homosexual character in the film Brokeback Mountain. I can say my favourite bit of Brokeback Mountain is not how I don't want to quit. I don't want to quit you. It's the anyway. They standard though. I do have to agree that he was a great father. And perhaps even greater than a fatherly year Hulk Hogan. After all, Leather Hedger did what it took to kill himself. His kid was without a father, yes, but the negative influence is now removed and his own child has a chance of a full recovery.
Fucking hell.
Oh my God. I mean, it can't be disgusting, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I think that is as... the lowest point that the Warrior can actually get to.
There's one more. And we talked about this was all because of Be a Warrior, the thing with Susan G. Coleman about Dan.
On famed WWE announcer Bobby the Brain Heenan, who, might I add, had recently been diagnosed with throat cancer at the time.
Who can hate the greatest manager of all time, one of the nicest guys in the entire business?
Well...
Well, one man can.
As for you, Bobby Heenan, it's just too difficult to keep a straight face talking about the pure, two-faced bag of shit that you are, and have always been. What with you actually wearing one as a piece of body jewellery, you are dying, diseased on the inside, and no more time is left to go back any of the integrity that matters the most on death's bed. Imagine what it will be like. Lying there, taking in your last breaths, knowing you hoard yourself out your whole life, had to. In your final years, be faced with emptying your own personal shit bag, affirming to the true value of what you achieved in your life. Not even Vince could come up with a better finish than this. Karma is just a beautiful thing to behold.
I mean, this one in particular is relevant, given that by sheer coincidence, Heenan's recent death coincided with the launch of the Unleash Your Warrior campaign. It's unclear whether the Susan G. Komen Foundation is aware of the Warriors' past statements. They are now. They declined to comment on this story. I mean, the purpose of bringing this up now is not to drag a dead man's name through the mud, or to simply stir up controversy for no reason. Why would we do that?
Why would we do that on an episode entitled Controversies Part 2.
Oh my God. But anyway, his widow, Dana Warrior, said in a statement to Vice Sports that this is what she said about the Warrior. This is what she said about the whole thing. Fuck them.
Fuck them. Fuck Bobby Heenan.
She said, Warrior had become a different man before he died. I will not be disloyal to my husband's memory or speak ill of a man who is not here to defend myself. What about Hitler? I'm not going to have a go at him because he's not here to defend himself. I can tell you, however, his heart was changed by conversations with his two daughters. I mean, I don't know, nice people. Good people do bad things, bad people do good things. But this is one of these things now where it's WWE having an idea and then not thinking it through. And especially with the recent Bobby Heenan thing. I mean, Warrior's a piece of shit for saying that, don't get me wrong. And WWE themselves released the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior DVD. That was a complete fucking, destroyance of his character until he eventually came back. He did come back. Macho Man didn't, so... With Roy, you can be a piece of shit and still get away with it. And now look how they're using him. And I think maybe Cody Rhodes is glad they're not doing it with Dusty Rhodes as well. Do you know what I mean? The memory. Not saying Dusty's got stuff to hide, but
well, it could all come out in the woodwork, and maybe there'll be a place for him on Controversial Charcters Part 3.
Yes, exactly. I mean, that is going to be the next goal. So you should probably have that in a couple of years' time. No, we'll make sure we got it out. All right. So most controversial. Just wrapping up. So WWE reacted to Vice.com story regarding the Ultimate Warrior and the use of his likeness in WWE's latest campaign against cancer with Susan G. Komen.
The company wasn't thrilled with the story and issued a statement reading, WWE's Unleash Your Warrior Breast Cancer Awareness Campaign and annual Warrior Award recognises individuals that exhibit the strength and courage of WWE's legendary character, the Ultimate Warrior. Any attempt to distract from the mission of these initiatives and take the spotlight away from the honorees is unfortunately misguided.
While WWE and the Warrior did not have the best relationship over the years, things did a full 180 when Warrior agreed to come back, welcoming him and his family back with open arms when Warrior passed away a few days after his Hall of Fame induction and appearing on Raw. The company bent over backwards to help Dana and the kids adjust to the new life. Dana Warrior is now a brand ambassador for the WWE, so WWE is still defending it. But
is that her actual name?
Dana Warrior.
Yeah.
He's changed his name to Warrior by Deepole because the WWE didn't let him have the Ultimate Warrior, so he was just known as the Warrior. And it's very famous. We'll see it next year when the Warrior comes to WCW and he gets told not to say Ultimate, and he only mentions it about 8 times in the first minute. Anyway, so we're doing controversial, and I thought, well, we are living in a time of controversy now, and I know it's not, well, what's weird is we say it's not wrestling related, but we've already talked on this podcast about a couple of people, Moolah, Vince McMahon, maybe Pat Patterson as well, who may be accused, so we're just going to do something for the first time ever. I want to go and look at the real news at the moment and talk about these guys, because something really interesting happened right at the end of this, but we'll talk about Harvey. I mean, we're so controversial. I don't know what we're going to get from this. I think he's innocent. No, we're not going to.
Well, have you got anything else to say, James? Yeah, Harvey Weinstein's innocent.
Yeah. But like we said, it's gone bigger now because Dustin Hoffman is among stars facing new harassment accusations. The two Oscar-winning actors and a Hollywood filmmaker are the latest high-profile figures to be accused of sexual harassment.
Well, the actors Kevin Spacey and Dustin Hoffman have been accused of sexual misconduct and have issued apologies. Meanwhile, 6 women have accused Brett Ratner, director of Rush Hour film series and X-Men The Last Stand, of sexual harassment or misconduct.
Well, Ratner's lawyer categorically denied all the accusations on his behalf. A representative for Spacey released a short statement to the US media saying the actor is taking the time necessary to seek evaluation and treatment. No other information is available at this time. A growing number of accusations have been made against public figures in recent weeks, and these allegations are sparked by multiple women speaking out against the Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein, and a subsequent campaign encouraging victims to share their stories of sexual harassment under the hashtag #MeToo. So who has been accused of misconduct? We're going to talk about each individual case or you know, the big ones. And the first one is, Dan?
Well, the first one is Kevin Spacey. And new allegations have emerged from a number of men accusing Kevin Spacey of sexual misconduct. Yes, men. US filmmaker Tony Montana claims he was groped by the actor in a LA bar in 2003. He says he was left with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, for 6 months after Spacey forcefully grabbed his crotch.
Well, Mr. Montana told Radar Online that he was in his 30s when the incident took place at the Coronet Bar in LA. It follows an allegation made by Anthony Rapp that the House of Cards actor tried to seduce him when he was years old. And yes, you say he's gay, but 14 years old, you know, for fuck's sake.
Well, I'm sorry, but Tony Montana, he's 30 years old. If a man touched my junk and I'm in my 30s, I'd punch him square in the fucking face.
Would you, if your boss did it to you, would you punch him in the face?
Yeah.
If it was because this is the thing, this guy could make or break you in that company. Yeah, and well, this is what they're finding. You know?
He must be broke now to make this allegation about. You know, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but wouldn't you, if anyone grabbed your junk, wouldn't you? Well, actually, you'd probably like it.
Yeah, I'd probably like it anyway, but that's not the point. Kevin Spacey, though, this is worst thing. He says he has no recollection of that encounter and was beyond horrified. Incidents regarding Spacey also alleged to have taken place in the UK while a 2-time Oscar winner was the artistic director at the Old Vic in London between 2004 and 2015.
Well, Mexican actor Roberto Cavazos, who acted in several plays at the theatre, claims Spacey routinely preyed on young male actors.
Well, one man told the BBC about his experience of being invited to spend a weekend with Spacey in New York when he was a teenager in the 1980s.
Kevin Spacey is seeking treatment following claims he sexually harassed a teen 30 years ago, his publicist said.
Well, on Monday, actor Anthony Rapp, like I said, claimed sexual advance towards him in 1985 when he was 14 years old. Like I said, Spacey said he does not remember the encounter, but he's beyond horrified. He said, if I did behave then as he describes, I owe him the sincerest apology added, and then he addressed rumours about his sexuality, saying he chooses to now live as a gay man. So, wait a minute, it's acceptable because now he's come out as gay. No, not every gay person is a fucking paedophile, you know?
Well, that is true. You know, I'm not going to defend what happened, but...
Fuck me!
You know,
sorry, go on.
An awful lot of accusations have come out, and you know, it does make one wonder. It does make me wonder if, you know, they are all 100%, or if, you know, they're slightly fudged. It's what parents in their right mind would let their teenager spend the weekend with Kevin Spacey.
Yeah, but this is what we see, people with power, and this is the thing, the make or break, and everybody keeps secrets, and this is the worst thing about it, Dan, is that with the Weinstein, with the Spacey, with other people, it's not just that one piece of shit person fucking going around doing this. It's the assistants.
It was the injury.
And it was the industry. It was, the assistants, the secretaries who fucking knew this was going on and kept it secret because, yes, they might have been worried about their jobs, but like you said, at the end of the day, if it had happened to you, you would have turned around and done something about it, or said something. These people have been pushed down, you know, who have been frightened and blacklisted, like we said, and so you will never work in this industry again if you do not do this, you know. And it really is fucked up, you know, and especially when you think of someone like Kevin Spacey, and like we said, because a rich man. Kevin Spacey is now taking the time necessary to seek evaluation and treatment. So, because he's rich, he can just throw money at this situation and go and get treatment for abusing children.
Well, yeah, but it's not treatment for something he can't remember.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And he's getting treatment now, not when he first done it.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, if he was poor, he would be in prison. End of story, you know? Anyway.
Well, a statement from Spacey's representatives said Kevin Spacey has taken the time necessary to seek evaluation and treatment. No other information is available at this time. And Roberto Cavazos, who works with Spacey at the Old Vic, said he expected a whole lot more accusations in coming days. And it seems the only requirement was to be a male under the age of 30 for Mr. Spacey to feel free to touch us, the Mexican actor wrote.
He also had a couple of unpleasant encounters with Spacey, which were on the verge of being called harassment, he added. The Old Vic Theatre said it was deeply dismayed by the allegations against Spacey, adding no complaints had been made towards the actor during their time there or after he had left.
Well, since the claims emerged, Netflix suspended the filming of the House of Cards series, and Spacey's 2017 Emmy Founders Award was revoked.
But the thing is, I found out they were going to cancel, they weren't going to do another series of House of Cards anyway on Netflix, so, you know. Anyway, allegations against Spacey come in the wake of the scandal hitting Harvey Weinstein. And since then, several claims have been made against Hollywood actors and directors, including Jeremy Piven and Dustin Hoffman.
Well, Piven, who's 52, had denied allegations that he groped actress Ariane Bellamore on the set of Entourage and at the Playboy Mansion.
Hoffman, now 80, said he felt terrible after Anna Graham Hunter claimed he had groped and spoken to about sex while she was a 17-year-old production assistant on one of his film sets. Anyway, next piece
on
of shit.
Our sleaze list.
Yeah, exactly. The next piece of shit. Brett Ratner. 6 women have accused the Hollywood filmmaker of sexual harassment or misconduct. The women included the newsroom actor made the allegations in the Los Angeles Times.
Natasha Henstridge, who appeared in Species and The Whole 10 Yards, claimed she had been forced into a sex act with Ratner as a teenager. The actress, now 43, was a 19-year-old model at the time. She alleges Ratner stopped her from leaving the room at his New York apartment and then made her perform a sex act on him.
He strong-armed me in a real way, she told the LA Times. He fit himself onto me. Ratner's lawyer categorically denied all the accusations on his behalf in response to the article. Separately, Ratner has filed a libel case in Hawaii against a woman who accused him on Facebook of rape more than 10 years ago.
Well, Ratner says he has stepped away from dealings with movie studio Warner Bros. Since the allegations came to light. And a source close to the situation confirmed to the Hollywood Reporter that Warner Bros. Had several ties with Ratner, making a decision not to renew his expired First Look deal and dropping him as producer on the upcoming film adaptation of The Goldfinch.
Right, and the last one, this is why I wanted to do something about this, because it kind of involves us in a weird way. Yeah, so this next one really got on my fucking nerves, because it kind of involves us, because the thing is, everything else has been about Hollywood and everything like this, but this guy here, or these people, are the kind of same as us, starting off as a podcast or on YouTube, and they represent themselves, you know, and you have to build a fan base for that, and it's exactly what we've done. I'll get onto that in a sec, but first off, Honest Trailers creator Andy Signal was fired Sunday following sexual misconduct claims from several women. His former employees at Defy Media and Screen Junkies said in a statement, "There is simply no justification for this egregious and intolerable behaviour." The statement reads, "In August, Defy's HR team was made aware of allegations made against Andy, at which time our investigation was launched." So they found it in August, but didn't do anything until more stuff happened. But anyway, Dan.
Yes, it continues. On Friday, new information became available. It continues. On Friday, new information became available, and the scope and magnitude of his inappropriate actions became apparent. We are acting swiftly to address the concerns of the people affected, and that going forward, our community is free of harassment or discrimination of any kind. Monkey's colleagues and freelancers are a team of remarkable creators serving loyal fans, and we will support and protect them. If anyone else is aware of behaviour of this type, we would encourage them to bring it to our attention.
One of the women who stepped forward, April O'Donnell, told the Wrap that Signal tried to sexually assault her repeatedly and threatened to get a boyfriend fired from his job at Screen Junkies if she spoke out. She said she and two other women went to the Screen Junkies Human Resource Department in July to file formal complaints.
Another woman, Emma Bowers, said that when she worked as an intern for Signal, he came across pin-up photos she had done in the past and wrote to her about it, jacking it to you in your undies. Signal then asked Bowers to come over so he could do that in person. "You can read a book for all I care," she quoted. "You can read a book for all I care," she quoted him saying. And Bowers added that her interactions with Signal killed her interest in pursuing a career in costume design, the field where she hoped her internship might lead.
Well, another woman, Devin Murphy, tweeted direct messages in an email he sent to me that scares me. In the messages, he repeatedly urged her to dress up in a costume. The Emmy-nominated Honest Trailers is a short-form variety series that satirises film and occasional television trailers. It launched in 2012, and its YouTube page has amassed over 137 million views. 157.
Screen Junkies, the channel that hosts Honest Trailers, has over 6.2 million subscribers. Defy is the parent company to Screen Junkies, YouTube, where Signal worked and served as a senior vice president of content. Signal has not responded to requests for comment.
But the reason I bring it up as well, and what's the thing about it, is it's almost like something happened here with us. You know, if we were inappropriate to either people or if we met someone in person that we did that to, it would be the equivalent of me getting involved in a scandal and then you having to deal with it on the podcast, Dan. You know, this is what it was for Screen Junkies. They did a video of the five of them sitting round and talking about him, basically saying we didn't know what a monster he was. Now, I'm not going to say anything about Screen Junkies not knowing, but Dan, if after, even now, if something was to come up, and you when you work with someone for that long, you know them. So for me, it's for them five to sit around the table and say, we didn't know he was a monster, we didn't know he did this. For me, it defies logic, because he would have been this guy all the time. Do you know what I mean? Or, you know, like if it happened for one of us, you know.
Well, can I just hold my hands up and say I was a perv way before I started this podcast. I want to continue to be a perv.
No, but the thing is though, is that this is what gets me angry, is that I have never ever taken advantage of a woman, you know, because like you say, you treat them like a fucking human being, and this is what these guys don't seem to realise, you know, and it really gets me, especially this guy who, if it wasn't for the fans and the people watching and listening to the podcast that he did, he wouldn't have had the success, and now he's taken advantage of that. And, you know, like I say, have you ever been accused, but in all seriousness, have you ever been accused by a woman or doing something untoward?
No, I haven't.
And the thing is, what it's going to stop now? What's it going to stop? It's going to stop basic a flirting and a basic just trying to be a nice person or trying to pay a compliment. That is going to be seen as this, because these guys have completely taken advantage of people in a horrible situation, and it's going to everything now. It's going to turn it up. Everything's going to be magnified. And it's just Yeah. But anyway, what do you think of all this, Dan? Like I said, what do you think of these guys? Do you think it's just because they're men and they can't help themselves, or do you think it's just because they're arseholes,
Well, I thought being a celebrity, you get groupies. And, Kevin Spacey, I'm sure, he could just say, I'm Kevin Spacey, I want some dick. And, it would come flocking to him. And, again, with the majority of these film star these Harvey Weinsteins and so on and so forth, there's a lot of people that would want to sleep with them. Is it the fact that they don't want to sleep with them that makes him want to sleep with them more? Yeah,
maybe. And this is the thing that we found here, didn't we, about Jimmy Savile and Ralph Harris? These guys taking advantage of people because they're in a position of power. But I think we've got to look at Kevin Spacey as a Ralph Harris or Jimmy Savile with the children thing.
Oh, most definitely, yeah.
And with Weinstein, definitely as the kind of monster who just everybody knew what he was doing. You look at Family Guy references and Seth MacFarlane references of people who knew what Weinstein was like, and he would get away with it because he was a huge Hollywood director. And exactly the same with these directors and actors as well. It comes down to it, you've got to know how to behave yourself.
Well, saying that I do the WNR podcast gets me loads of gash.
Yeah, exactly. But you don't take advantage. You don't.
Oh no.
You know what I mean? Like it's not.
No.
It's not saying, I'll do something in exchange and we'll mention you in the podcast, something like that. This is what it goes into,
5 no's equals a yes.
Exactly, no. but joking like that, it won't be allowed anymore. Yeah. And we saw it from the Mae Young Classic with a couple of comments and the kind of reaction that got. And then now in this kind of I'm not saying that, a joke too far if you can joke about even rape anymore, but I don't think rape's that funny in the first place.
You get the likes of Frankie Boyle.
Yeah.
And, the things that they go over. But, again, you can't make a joke out of anything now unless it's... Because, I saw this disabled girl on Facebook. No, she had her arm ripped off in a motorbike accident and, she dressed it up as a bloody thing and put gauze all over it and put, nothing to here. But it's all right for her to mock herself. But whenever someone else mocks her, it's, you're the biggest cunt in the world.
Yeah, but there's a thing, it's down to her if she wants to deal with it in that way. Yes, it's exactly like with black people and the M-word. Oh, they call each other that, why can't we call it? Because it's that's the thing to do. Do you know what I mean? It's like you have to deal with this. I mean, I'm not going to start saying that white males are going to start being oppressed, because that's just ridiculous. But yeah, the thing about it is there's so many ways to deal with it. And I think the main thing is to anybody out there, don't take advantage of someone, like Dan said, if you're that good looking and charming in yourself, you don't need a position of power to get someone or take advantage of them. There'll be people available
and
for you.
If you're ugly, there's always ugly birds for you.
Exactly, go on POF.
You just have to drop your standards a little bit.
Exactly,
But 2 5s equals a 10.
Exactly. So Dan's found it out. So everybody listening, you can find it out as well. But no, that is it. And we've got to mention it because it's going to get. There's going to be more people, and there'll be some of your favourite actors and some of your favourite people that will be accused of this, and you'll think to yourself, oh God, I can't believe him on that. But at the end of the day, it's down to them. It's down to you as well to kind of act the way you want to act. And
again, it's you should have losing a job of that. I know it is probably a high profile job, and it could lead to something well paid. But if you speak out about it the day after it happens or, later on that day, then A, there's a lot more chance of proving it happened, like with swabs, DNA testing and things like that. And B, if Kevin Spacey gets fired, your name's going to get recognition and you could...
But as we spoke about earlier, no one's ever heard of the other Orton. He got blacklisted. He never worked in wrestling again because of that. So that is the other Do you know, when you're in such a massive position, a bit like Weinstein be able to do. I think with Spacey, it's a lot, and like I said, a lot of people around them as well. If a lot of people around them actually fucking said something about it rather than letting this happen, it's not alright. It's like the nurses that used to let Jimmy Savile into the fucking children's ward. That's not alright, do you know what I mean? You know, so something's got to be done.
Well, they should be tarred with the same brush that Jimmy Savile did.
Exactly.
I know it's not as bad as that, but it's turning, it's only Jimmy.
Exactly, yeah. Right. You're I can't remember what the fucking official word is it, but you're helping out a criminal, basically.
Aiding and abetting.
Exactly, yeah. So, and this is the thing, and if you're asking yourself, if you look at it yourself, if any guys out there, I'm sure most of the guys listening can't believe this shit, but if guys are listening going, oh yeah, that's alright, well fuck you, you know what I mean? Have some respect, sort yourself out, and this is what we talk about controversial characters as well. We're mentioning it now, because this is crazy to be able to say this, there's a few things that you don't do.
We may sometimes make light of it and make untoward comments about things, but we don't mean it sincerely. It's just us having a laugh and being ourselves. Well, not being ourselves, but just us having a laugh. And we'd never go out and do anything as bad as what Weinstein, Spacey, and so on and so forth would do. You've
literally just sprung something to mind, because the Defy Media, the guys protecting Andy Signal like they did, they've got a code of conduct now on their podcast and their show, and it's stuff to do and don't do. Now, if your company needs a fucking policy to say what you do and not do, how you respect a woman, then I don't think they're fucking, you know what I mean? I don't think it's right.
But then again, you have to put on bottles of bleach, do not drink.
I suppose so, but alright, yeah, okay. In that, yeah, no, but still, we don't need. Do you want me to put up a fucking safeguard, like a line of what we can and can't say? We know the 2 words we can't say.
There's always a line you tell me not to cross every
Yeah, I mean that's what I say. We are literally, we're policing ourselves here as well as releasing a podcast and what goes out.
But it's just like. There is unwritten things, so you don't go killing people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, do you need that written down?
Exactly. It's if it wasn't written down, I'd be going out killing people.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway,
use your brain and don't be a dick.
Exactly. That's the main thing. Don't be a dick. Dan, anything to say about anything we've heard today?
I still believe Chris Benoit's innocent.
Well, I think there's no better way to end it there. We've had everything today. Any comments? Let us know what you think about that. Not just that statement, but anything we've said here. If you've learned anything, let us know. Contact us on Twitter at WWE Network Review or
at Vince McDan WWE.
I'm at J_Rowlands. We've also got a friend on Twitter.
Yes, he is the very uncontroversial mini Chris Benoit. Come on, James.
I know, mini Chris Benoit's bringing it out, isn't he?
Well, he's a very uncontroversial mini Chris Benoit, and you can find him at
across all the Google platforms. WWE Network Review on Google+. Don't forget to send us an email. The WNR podcast@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook.
You can come and find our page and give us a like with a WWE Network Review. Or you can come and find me and add me as a friend. I am Vince McDan.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, the WWE Network Review podcast. We've got clips going up there. Podcasts go up there at the same time we do other places like SoundCloud.
On your phone.
We're also on Spreaker Radio. We've got our live shows coming November 18th, November 19th. Stitcher Radio and iTunes where you can download, subscribe, rate and review there. But that is it. I have been James Rowlands, and as always, I was joined by
Dan White.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Don't forget, controversy doesn't end. Next week, Survivor Series 97, the Montreal Screwjob. Bye.
Bye.